Oh my gosh, it is that time of year again. Who would have thought, guys? We talk about this all the time. Oh, what are we going to do? Football not here. Well, we made it through it. We officially made it through it. All three of us are showing our hair. That's how important this show is today. It's very important. Jerry's obviously rocking the White Sox stuff. I was at the park last Saturday, Jerry. Little underwhelming, I will say. But the one thing I did like about it, easy in and easy out for someone like me, just where it's based in town. So it was good.
You you missed out because Ozzie Night was fantastic. Big win, by the
Yeah,
way.
it was
Thank you.
good. It was a good. I watched Mirakami hit an Oppo homer off the pole. It was actually pretty sweet.
The rate was rocking for Pope at night. I have one is upstairs. Depending on how long this goes, it might come on. Um, no, and I have not seen the rate like that in a long time. 38,000 strong for Catholicism in Chicago. But I could talk baseball. I know we have some Michigan folks here, and I don't really know if they want to talk baseball after what the White Sox just did. So, we'll keep it at that. But we're here to talk about the other thing Michigan's kind of good at. Well, part of it, because Michigan State I think is kind of bad, and that's college football, baby. Come on,
Yeah.
we got to go.
Both Michigan schools are very good at scandal. Very good at scandal.
True.
Very good at controversy. So look, this is our college football preview. We're going to talk about everything and anything college football. And we will start with last season. Looking back on it, guys, it was the year of Indiana. Who would have thought? Mendoza wins the Heisman Trophy. They're in the middle. They go, 16-0, winning the Big Ten title, defeating Miami in the national title game, doing what nobody expected to ever happen. Kurt Signetti, top of the food chain when it comes to coaching. So the year of Indiana. What the hell is that noise, Jerry?
That is my lovely fiance getting the rest of the clothes out of
that's fine.
our basement here. So yeah, no, she's now working days. So
I thought you were getting shot. I thought you were still on the south side of Chicago.
It's literally just my door.
Okay. Well, I thought you were still at the rate, as you call it.
Hey,
so
man.
I just wanted to make sure you were safe.
Get it right. When they're shooting at the rate, it's somebody who shoots themselves to the belly rolls of fat that they have going on here. Okay.
All right.
Come on, respect the game where you see it.
I just wanted to make sure you're okay down there in the dirty St. Louis. You never know what's going to happen. So just want to make sure you're alive.
SEC country, technically.
Yeah. What an SEC country. Yeah. Some say it does. Not anymore. We'll explain. We'll talk about that later. We also had some coaching controversies. Lane Kiffin there. Look, this was the big change right there. He goes through the divorce with Ole Miss, goes to LSU and the messy exit. And then we go to that guy, just to the right of Mendoza there. He made a mess of his name, of his family, and on his assistant many times, I'm sure.
Oh, my God.
Also, putting Mendoza next to Sharon Moore just feels like, I don't know what. That's like the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. Like, Mendoza's such a, chill, non-problematic dude, right, and all these things. And then you have Sharon Moore next to him. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, Sharon Moore's a messy guy, allegedly inside his assistant as well. Allegedly.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, my God.
Allegedly. But we don't have to worry about that because he got fired by Michigan, so he's no longer the coach. Kyle Winningham steps in. So we have two top 10, I would say, programs get new guys that come in two different ways, both controversial. And then, of course, we still have to talk about the gambling man down there. Brendan Sorsby walks away from Texas Tech and college football after being caught for having the gambling addiction, where it was also learned that he bet on games where he was involved in as backup at Indiana. So now Texas Tech put this $5 million investment in. They made the playoff last year. They're supposed to kind of be, viewed as maybe can they take the next step in the national contention for a championship. So now they kind of have to go back to the guy that was their backup last year. So you have to get through that controversy. So a lot happened, I would say, last year, the offseason, a lot of messy things. And that takes us now to where we're at now for the season. And, of course, we have to start with firing coaches. This is what we just like to do. We just like to talk about guys who should no longer have jobs. And so we have some of the names right here who are prime on the hot seat, like fire is underneath them as we speak. Many for different reasons, some for losing, some for just being dysfunctional, Bill Belichick being one. And, yeah, so All right, I'll start here. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. He's going into his 4th season. Some of these guys, when I was doing the research, it's hard to believe they've been at their schools for so long. Luke Fickell's been at Wisconsin for 4 seasons, 17-21 overall, and they were 4-8 last year. Awful. Shane Beamer at South Carolina. He's going into his 6th season down there. 33-30 overall. They were also 4-8 last year. Bill Belichick at North Carolina. 2nd season, 4-8 last year, and he currently has his GM on paid leave from the school. And he also, of course, we know, has the messy girlfriend. What's up with messy women and some of these coaches? It's just a thing, I guess. Lincoln Riley at USC. You're going to say, what? Lincoln Riley did very well last year. He's going into his 5th season, though, 35-18 overall. They were 9-4 last year, but he's yet to make a Big Ten title game and or make the playoff, and this is USC. Now we go to the guy in the middle, who's probably the safest, I would say, out of all these guys in the hot seat, but still, you never really know. That's Dabo Swinney at Clemson. They were 7-6 last season after being top 5 in the preseason ranking. The guy underneath him, I still don't understand how this guy has a job. I said it last year, and that's Mike Norvell at Florida State. This will be his 7th season at Florida State. Let that register.
You want to know why he's still there? They're broke.
Season. But 7 seasons of Mike Norvell. He's 38-34, 2-10, and 5-7 last year. Have not made the playoffs. Of course, they had the controversy years ago. Matt Rule at Nebraska going into his 4th season, 19-19, 7-6 the last 2 seasons. Nebraska's not made the Big Ten title game since 2012. That would have been their 2nd year in the conference. Mike Locksley, no, this is Big Ten country over here. Mike Locksley at Maryland, 8 seasons. Get this. He's been there 8 seasons. He's 37-49 overall as the coach. 4-8 the last 2 seasons. Granted, it's Maryland, but come on, that's pretty bad. And then the last 2. Bill O'Brien at Boston College. He's going into his 3rd season, 9-16 overall, 2-10 last season. And Dave Arrieta at Baylor. Will be his 7th season at Baylor. Of course, he was the famous defensive coordinator on the LSU team years ago with Joe Burrow and the boys. 36-37 overall. He won 12 games in his 2nd season, and since then he's been 22-28. Boys, these seats are hot. Where do we want to start? Who do we want to start with? Dysfunction everywhere.
I mean, I think the ones I want to group together that I'm very curious about are both Luke Fickell and Mike Locksley, because these guys got one more year because NIL exists. Both Luke Fickell and Locksley got the, hey, we're going to save the buyout money right now. We're not going to do that, and we're going to get NIL money in here. And that means to me feels like the new way you get yourself onto the hot seat if you're one of these middle tier programs. And I'm really curious how that plays out, because now instead of firing the coordinators, that's usually like your go-to thing. If you're starting to get a little warm, things are going well, offense is struggling, sorry, we bring the offense coordinator that usually gets you a couple more weeks, maybe another year if it works out well, right? Now we're going to take that fund, we're going to take that money and reinvest in the roster. Both these guys sit in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten overall is going to have a lot more change because last year the SEC changed a lot of hands. So it's just kind of one of those things where I think the SEC this year has less overall firings. There's so many first-year guys. And in return, the Big Ten's had some middle-tier folks. So I'm very curious with those two because it's like a money question of, okay, they put the money into the roster. So, like, I'm fascinated with Maryland. Mike Locksley has the second most returning production in the country coming in this year. Malik Washington is your quarterback there. You want to keep an eye there. Luke Fickell in Wisconsin have tried to get a little bit better. I don't know if that's really going to work. But then also, look, half this graphic is the Big Ten, right? Lincoln Riley, as you talked about earlier, has not made the playoff. Notre Dame's on the schedule not this year, right?
No, 2030.
Yeah, so we had to wait a couple of years. That kind of helps him. I know that's annoying, but also if I read the reports right, he's kind of one of the guys that's pushed for this. Like, hey, why play them, et cetera, and punish Notre Dame for the
He's scared,
game.
Jared. Just say it. He's scared.
A little bit.
He
did this.
Why he left Oklahoma? He's a scared little child.
And then I'll round out our Big Ten here. Matt Rule didn't have year 3 Matt Rule. I think this seat is going to get fascinating because at quarterback you have Colin Drea from UNLV, right? He'll be fun. You also don't have one of the best running backs in the country anymore, which really saved him and kept him in a lot of games. And Emmett Johnson, he's in the NFL, right? And he's supposed to be there. But I think the Big Ten itself is going to have a lot of turnover. It's just curious. I'm just more curious with these programs that put money into the roster per se, instead of moving on this last year when we really had the wheels turning. If that's going to become a new cop out answer, or if that's the final straw, right? Because I could see other coaches on this list getting a similar. We're going to reinvest, give you one more year. These are going to be some of those test cases if that's something that continues to happen, or if that's your last straw.
I think Lincoln Riley is like really interesting because he doesn't he's not necessarily underperforming to like a level where it's like a Norvell or something where it's like how in the hell like we can grasp our head on why he's the coach there, right? But he's been there for 5 years. He has not made the college football playoff one time. And I looked up a stat earlier. He has 7 straight losses to top 10 teams. So he's getting it. He has these games where it's kind of like, prove your mettle against these top 10 teams, and he's losing those games 7 straight. So that just, in order for he's there to take the next step. USC has to be a conference champion or be in the college football playoffs at least. And this is really hard for them because I think there are some absolute juggernauts right now in the Big Ten. So I think asking him to be a conference champion is a little insane. But to make the college football playoff, I feel like that's kind of doable. When we talk about the Big Ten a little bit, we'll talk about their schedule or whatever. Also with Dabo, I kind of like, I don't know. I feel like this is a little self-inflicted because he has a principle, and it is, I am not going to live and die by the portal. I'm going to recruit people and I'm going to develop them. And then we have seniors who are super developed. Well, last year was their senior group, and we saw what happened with them last year. So this experiment or this principle that Dabo lives by kind of failed him. And I understand, stick to your guns or whatever, but the times are changing and to just be like, well, this is how we're going to do it. And every other team does it differently. And we're going to succeed doing it our way. Yes, that'd be perfect. If the one time it actually was supposed to happen, it actually worked. It didn't work. So now if he keeps, we're going to recruit, we're going to develop, that's how we're going to build our team. If he keeps doing that and not succeeding, we're just going to have to come, we have to stay with the times here. Bill Belichick is interesting just because I don't know. Have we ever seen Bill Belichick on a hot seat list before? I don't know. I think no.
Even though he wasn't there, but the last 5 years at New England, we don't have to lie.
Right.
The end of New England, it wasn't good. No. Right. So I feel like he was if anything, I feel like Dabo is the college football version of Bill Belichick in the NFL, right? Yeah. Where it's like, do you really get away from the guy who's brought you all the success? Yeah. And then Bill Belichick is like, in New England, come on, man, he's running out Mac Jones and all those things. That was bad. It was bad. We don't have to lie. And with Dabo, it's kind of the same thing, right? Kate Klubnik's better than Mac Jones, in terms of that type of idea. But 7-5 last year, not changing your principles, etc. The thing is, they're just coaching on the same level now, which is also, I really like that point, Trevor. It is kind of funny, but I think they're kind of just, it's like you're watching them in the mirror a little bit of will Clemson move on from their guy who's brought them all the success the same way New England had to really wait until Bill was done and then not done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with Matt Rule, though, I have a little bit of faith in him this season. The schedule is a Big Ten schedule. It's tough, but I do really like that guy from UNLV. And I think they almost, it's so funny. Dylan Raiola leaves to go back up Dante Moore. I don't know. But I do like that. I like him a lot. I think he threw for 4,000 yards or something. It was something crazy. So I don't know if they necessarily got way better at quarterback. But I don't think they took a drastic step down. I don't think losing Dylan Raiola was a huge end to Matt Rule's tenure at Nebraska. I think that they have a lot of the pieces, like you said, they don't have the running back anymore, Emmett Johnson, but I think there are pieces there to where, and again, Matt Rule, I don't necessarily think he has to go 11-1 or 10-2 or whatever, but be that spoiler team for some teams. I think take a game away from Michigan or Ohio State or Oregon or some of these teams. No one's asking him to win a conference championship, and if anyone is, they're just being blatantly not looking at the Big Ten as a conference. But yeah, that's basically. Bill O'Brien, I think he's screwed. I think it's just a terrible position to be in. I don't know. Beamer is another guy where it's you just need to be that spoiler team. We don't need you to get to a conference championship. you have to beat some good teams. You have to take, you have to win some one-score games against these good teams and ruin their football playoff hopes. That's kind of where, and then, and have a winning record as well. So, yeah, a lot of hot seats. I expect, like we said, some of these guys to actually get fired. And then Iowa's coach, I don't think, he's not on the hot seat, but dude's been there for like 100 years. So.
They'll let him coach till the day.
Yeah.
They love
I don't think they'll fire
much.
him, but I think he might retire soon.
He
Like,
might
I'll tell you what, Iowa's going to go at least 8-4 this year. I'll give you that. That's exactly.
Yeah, they always do, and they're going to.
They always do. 8-4, 9-3, and their defense is going to be top 10, and their offense will be 152nd.
Dude, that was my preview notes. Was guess what? They're going to be terrible on offense, great on defense.
Yep.
Let's just run it back.
That's the Iowa way. The interesting thing with Bill Belichick is everything he was in New England is like opposite of what he is now. He was the most disciplined guy, buttoned up guy, and now he's just like loosey goosey. It's almost like it's like the corpse of Bill Belichick running North Carolina. Like,
well, it's his retirement. You know what I mean? Like
it's like Weekend at Bernie's, the movie where they're just like keeping him alive. Like, hey, yeah, he's alive, and he's like, no, actually, he died like 3 weeks ago. So you have that. I expect if Shane Beamer and Mike Norvell both start badly, they're fired mid-season. Like, I don't even think there's going to be time wasted on those two. I think Luke Fickell is going to save his job just based off of and we'll talk about this later, just based off the schedule for Wisconsin. And he's kind of getting back into like the Cincinnati offense, Wisconsin. And that is, he kind of went away from that. He tried to do something different the first couple of years. Lincoln Riley, I think it's one of those where there's a lot of pressure on him just based off, and a lot of teams in the Big Ten and all these coaches too, is Indiana just won a national title. And Lincoln Riley returns his quarterback, returns some key pieces. They're going to be really good, I think, this year. And they also had the number 1 recruiting class with impact freshmen coming in. So it kind of heightens it up. But you're going to have a lot of the people that have a say with the money is like, hey, Indiana can win a national title and we're USC and we haven't even made the playoff yet. So I think that hurts some of these coaches. But yeah, I expect, Shane Beamer, Mike Norvell, probably Mike Loxley as well. You start off bad, they're going to be gone by mid-season, and it's going to happen. So it'll just be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, and there's probably guys that we're not even thinking of or not even talking about right now that will probably end up being on the chopping block as well when it's all said and done.
Well, there's so much movement last year too, which makes this a little bit more interesting, right? Like, and all the domino effects, right? Like, I think Penn State fires James Franklin. Now he's at Virginia Tech because Brent Pry's been fired. And then Matt Campbell's there. So then Iowa State got a new coach. So you can only churn the wheel so much here, right? So, like, I do think that this year, relatively speaking, will probably be just a little bit lighter. But, like, if a USC opens, right, if a Clemson opens, it does still spin the wheel a fair bit. Some of these jobs would be interesting if they open. I'm also curious when we talk about Shane Beaver and Dave Aranda, their hopes are on 2 quarterbacks, right? Like, the gripe of Shane Beamer is, last year, yes, you were 4-8. 2 years ago, you were a borderline playoff team, and they were a team that made the argument in the 12-team playoff of like, they got hot at the right time. How could you let South Carolina out? Look at them. They're like, I think they had a 10-win season, and they won like 6 in a row.
And they played spoiler that year to Trevor's point.
But like they both played spoiler, but they were like legit playoff contenders, and it really was the Lenore Sellers, Nick Harbor, and that really a couple really talented pieces that just have been good, but they haven't panned out to team success. And so if Nick Harbor doesn't break through at wide receiver, who he struggled last 3 years, but is one of the most physically gifted receivers, I think, in all the SEC, if not college football. And Lenore Sellers, who is a scrambling, fun QB, he is a pain to play against. As someone who watched him tear up Missouri for the last couple of years, he's a guy that strikes fear himself into teams, but has South Carolina itself translated. That's kind of the same problem for Dave Aranda, whose offense has actually been kind of good the last couple of years, and the defense has been bad. Weird to think about when we think about that LSU defense with Joe Burrow and friends, right? But they have DJ Lagway from Florida here now, and that freshman year DJ Lagway, which saved Billy Napier's job for a bit, do you get him or do you get last year's DJ Lagway, who was struggling, had injuries, did not look like that guy, and inevitably gets Billy Napier fired? So it is funny to see how like the fate of some of these guys sits on those players and their developments, which nowadays in the transfer portal, et cetera, right? Like talking about the development and getting better as a program sometimes doesn't feel as linear, right? Like if you develop these teams, et cetera, that doesn't guarantee you'll have your job anymore. You just need to win by any means necessary. And when we start going through the conferences, some of the best teams in the country are retooling heavily from the portal. That's just a reality in the situation. So I'm just curious how those development aspects play out while you also have this kind of win now attitude at all points, because every year you're not winning really can put a dent long term into your program's future.
Yeah, it is one of those things where the turnover is so quick now because, we've seen Indiana go from the worst program historically in college football to top of college football in just 2 years. So everything has changed. We want fast, we want it quick. And for some of these guys, it's taken a while and they may not get enough time. Some of them just may not get enough time to fully build a program like you got back in the day. So it'll be very interesting to see. All right, looking now at our first conference/team, we will dump into this is kind of more of Notre Dame and the non-powers. Looking at it, 2 non-powers made the playoffs last year in Tulane and James Madison. Both have lost their coaches, so they have to kind of retool that way. We have the new looked Pac-12 out there in the West. Yes, the Pac-12 is still alive. It's just a non-power now, and that is headlined by Boise State, Fresno State, Oregon State, San Diego State, and Washington State. We should have just named it the State Conference. That would have made way more sense. So those are the ones headlining it when you look at it. And then, of course, we have Notre Dame. Creepy Photo here is excited for the season, as I am as well. He can feel it down in his plums. Notre Dame last year went 10-2, missed out on the playoffs, skipped their bowl game. And now this year, I would say – in my lifetime, it's probably the most talented Notre Dame team on paper I've seen and have expected. Now, I have seen a lot of this in my life of Notre Dame's supposed to be good, and it doesn't happen. This year, it feels a little different. CJ Carr's back. A lot of the offensive weapons are back. Yes, they lost 2 first-round running backs, but with their offensive line, and it's kind of the way that this team will look in the passing game, I think they'll be just fine. The defense is what's the most exciting part. You bring back 90% of your defense. You have the best corner in college football, some of the best linebackers. They retooled in the transfer portal, defensive line, big upgrades. So there's a lot of pressure, a lot of, I would say, likability for them. And as Jonathan says here, the schedule is pretty good. I will say, in defense of Notre Dame, they have bigger name schools on the schedule. They just have been dog shit the last couple of years. Wisconsin's starting it out. It's not our fault Wisconsin under Luke Fickell's been dog shit. So it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, look, it'll be a very interesting we kind of just right now in college football, we're kind of just focusing on 2 conferences. So it's kind of interesting to still look at the little guy. And of course, 2 of the little guys being in the playoffs, granted didn't go as well. You kind of have these motions, and of course, Notre Dame is kind of the big dog out there. With high expectations this season.
I mean, Notre Dame's season, I feel like, is pretty simple. It comes down to 2 games. I had to look back at the schedule because I decided to double-check myself. What do they do in Provo? What do they do against Miami? Now, what Notre Dame has been pretty good at, Marcus Freeman's been pretty good at the last couple of years, they don't let a lot of those – after year 1, a lot of those games you're supposed to win, they've won. There's not a lot of upsets in Notre Dame. Yes, you have the NIU loss, I think, as I was in year 2. But, like, for the most part, Marcus Freeman's kept that consistency of you beat the teams you're supposed to. And they have a schedule where they could do that pretty handily. But what left Notre Dame out of the playoff were the games they didn't win against A&M and against Miami. You need to probably win both. You need to at least win one of BYU and Miami. You do that, and you take care of the rest of the schedule, we're talking about a playoff spot. And I think that's pretty, cut and dry. You have the talent, you have everything else. To your point, Caleb, both Wisconsin and Michigan State not really helping the bandwidth here in terms of the non-ACC part of your schedule not being as strong, and Purdue. The thing with Notre Dame is, like, that's what it comes down to. It's like a 2-game season, which is weird for me to say about Notre Dame. Because, yeah, you've had some weaker ACC schedule these last couple of years. But with everything that happened with last year's playoff, that was a data point we could use, right? And Notre Dame's schedule this year is fairly similarly built in terms of these really high-profile matchups that are going to matter a lot. And a lot of them, and if you lose it, it gets real weird. But they do duck a lot of folks in the ACC this year, which really helps. So, again, It's a 2-game season, and I am fascinated. I have not seen this much hype around a Notre Dame quarterback in a while.
Since Brady Quinn.
Like homegrown. I would argue
Yeah.
Sam Hartman got a lot of love when he came from Wake, but like in terms of a homegrown guy, But usually when I think of Notre Dame, like in this context, it's like you have a great quarterback and then no one can catch the ball. And then the year you guys catch the ball,
right,
the quarterback isn't worth anything. So if Freeman puts that together, so be it. But it's a 2-game season for Notre Dame. That's what it's going to come down to. And I think we're all adults in this room. If they don't figure it out there, things get real interesting real quick.
Yeah, Caleb, you kind of talked about it, but that defense is basically loaded. They returned so many guys that and anytime you can return guys, that's just a year of development, and then so that means your defense is just better because they have developed or whatever. So there's no, I don't have any real concerns about the defense. I think it's an elite defense. I think it's one of the best defenses in the country. I don't have a concern about CJ Carr, but a game I'm really looking forward to is the BYU game to see how him and Bear Bachmeier look playing against each other. Last year both of them were freshmen, both had great freshman seasons. And now we're coming into year 2, and these are two guys we're both looking at being like, these guys need to take a huge step forward. And I'm really interested to see how they compete. Miami, they lost some things. I still think they're a national champion contender. I think they're still, a team that could win a national championship. So, like Jerry said, though, too, you have to at least win one of those games. You can't lose to BYU and Miami and then sit there and go, well, we should be in the college football playoff. Like the schedule, SMU is not a terrible team. There's some other teams on the schedule that, I think a lot of it gets blown out of proportion. I think, there's teams in the Big Ten that don't play Indiana, Oregon, or Ohio State. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty easy schedule too. I think BYU could win the Big 12, and I think Miami is probably going to walk through the ACC and potentially win a national championship or be in that conversation. So I don't think the Notre Dame schedule is as weak as people are, saying it is. But CJ, this is all on CJ Carr. He can't, go out there and just not perform. He has to be at this level that where he can beat elite teams. And he has to be that kind of quarterback. And if he's not, I don't think that they can, they get past BYU or Miami, regardless of how good their defense is, because those are two teams that also have great defenses. So I am really excited for those games, specifically BYU. But I think that Notre Dame would be, in the handful of teams I would consider, probably could win a national championship this season.
Well, I think the other thing too with the schedule that's different this year is the 2 games they lost last year were at the beginning of the season. So then you got to see 10 games, and the argument was better for the playoff. This year, if they lose both of those games to BYU or Miami, they're towards the middle to later parts of the season. You're not even going to be in that conversation at that point, because it's not just if you lose, it's when you lose. We've seen over the past 2 years with this 12-team playoff, it's more based off of that. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing. When you look at it, the nice thing for them with the Miami game is it's at home and it's in November. Don't know why Miami agreed to that, but I'm fine with that.
It's part of the ACC deal, so I don't think they have an agreement. They can't change that game.
No, I get that, but I just think it's funny that Miami's like, yeah, we'll come up and play in November.
Well, not every team tries to dictate the terms of their rivalry like somebody else.
Well, that is true. That's very true, Jerry. That would be like USC. That's why we don't play them anymore, because they refused to come play us in mid-October. It's just fucking pussies.
That's basically summer still.
Yeah.
It's warming nowadays,
It only rained last year, during the game, which it was super hot. I wore shorts and a t-shirt during that game, but it rains in Southern California sometimes. But no, sky's the limit for Notre Dame. I think that's what terrifies me as a fan is high expectations, which I've had this before, but it just something about it feels a little different. And the other thing is the chip of missing last year's playoff is kind of fueling the team. It's not like you have all new guys, like quarterback-wise, that missed the playoff, and you come in with new guys. It's a lot of the same guys that were on the team last year come back. Some guys that were young last year are only going to get better. And, there's a lot of wide receivers, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how they develop and how it kind of ends up filling out the room. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. So, yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. Do you guys have anything on the non-power teams? Any teams there that kind of –
I'm going to ask a question about Notre Dame first, and then I'll take care of our non-powers if we need it to be. I got y'all. Do you think, both of you, that Notre Dame currently is the best team in Indiana? I'm going back and forth on this question. And I think this is a fascinating moment in time. Honest to God, swear to your heart.
I would say one key factor, and this is how I look at college football for a lot of things, and how I base who I think is going to be good and not be good this year. Their quarterback comes back. I don't know what Josh Hoover is going to be like in the Big Ten. That's my only fear when I look at Indiana. So I would lean Notre Dame, but it's close. It is very, very close because both their defenses are still going to be really good. And I think Indiana has a better defensive line than Notre Dame does. But I just give the slight edge to Notre Dame based off of quarterback coming back.
Well, I think the secondary goes to Notre Dame. But when I was doing my research, I was looking into, the TCU stuff. And Josh Hoover started 31 games, and he had 42 turnovers. So let's just, we'll do a little mathematics in your head. And that's against, Big 12, which, and again, a little bit of a spoiler, I don't really have a national championship favorite in the Big 12. I have teams that I think will make the college football playoff, but I don't expect Texas Tech or BYU to be national champions. I think it is a bit of a weaker whatever. So I think the Big Ten is going to be a bit of a challenge for him. With that being said, he has a lot of experience. He has tons of experience. Like I just said, he had 31 games at TCU. And then we're forgetting about the Purdue Boilerman. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's be adults, please.
No, it's you kind of, when answering this question, you kind of gamble on what CJ Carr is going to look like. I think CJ Carr, the season that he's going to have, will be better than the season that Josh Hoover is going to have. Even if, I would say Josh Hoover is probably going to play more difficult defenses. I think that CJ Carr at the end of the year will have stats that are better than Josh Hoover's. So I will give it to Notre Dame.
See, the one thing I'm curious about is I think the skill positions for Indiana are really, really good. Nick Marsh is a grab, and we'll also bring this up in the Big Ten preview, right?
We also have the other wide receiver coming back.
Charlie Becker, who's kind of that we just like tight end wide receiver. Yeah, the defense isn't there as much, but the fact that that's a question I think is fascinating. I thought in the Notre Dame section is something that I think is also going to play into the psyche of all this too, right? We've had a little bit of the talk on Twitter, and Signetti's dropping a couple quotes about playing Notre Dame and if they should or not, right? And like the fact that we're having this kind of fervor in the Hoosier State, and it's not basketball, I think is awesome. One, but two, I think we'll add some pressure to this Notre Dame season, especially if things do not go as planned, right? Because I don't think the Indiana team goes far away. But let me save some of that for our Big Ten stuff here and there. The things I'm curious about in the non-powers, first of all, your two playoff teams are replacing coaches. Bob Chesney's now at UCLA. Tulane, he's at Florida Summerall. Will Hall takes over for Tulane. I think that's a regression candidate. I don't really like the Will Hall hire. He was kind of in the building. He was in Southern Miss, if I remember beforehand. I don't like it. James Madison's going back to Billy Napier, who first found his success in the Sun Belt. The question with James Madison and a team that's kind of continued to be really good in the Sun Belt is they've gone through these coaches now, right? You've gone through Signetti. Everyone talks about him. Chesney obviously had a lot of success there. Now Billy's going back. This is a very different Sun Belt in terms of both just like teams and everything, because he came up through Louisiana, and two, the world of college football that we're in. Like most other times in history, if Billy Napier goes back to the Sun Belt, you go, that's a great hire. He had success there in the past. His success at Louisiana compared to the NIL, all this other world, pick whatever you want stuff, crazy. So I think that I'm not sold on James Madison, but I'm curious if they keep up that success, that means there's something in the building. And this is a team that came up to FBS only not even a decade ago, about 5-6 years ago. So for them to be this successful is fascinating. USF's a team to keep an eye on. Brian Hartline, the former offensive coordinator at Ohio State's here, and they're spending money. This is a team this is what the rev share stuff, which is different than NIL. It's all stupid. But basically all these teams get an allotment of money that they can spend on players to some degree nowadays. USF saying they're going to spend all their money. That's big for the Power Six or the Group of Six here, where you don't have those financials for everybody. they're throwing in a lot of money really quick. Now, obviously, last year they were very fun. A lot of their pieces are at Auburn, but one, they're spending, and two, they got a guy who I think a lot of people thought would be a good head coach because he recruited his butt off. Think of all of those Ohio State wide receivers that are doing something in NFL. A lot of them have to do with Brian Hartline and his ability to find that talent, etc. He's going to a place where he's found talent in the past in Florida, in South Florida. Look at the best receiver on Ohio State right now. He is from the state of Florida. Like, connections are here. The only other team I think you should really keep an eye on is UNLV. Dan Mullen purposely kept himself out of all the rumor mills, etc. He said he really wanted to be there. Obviously, Colin Drea's gone, but they run an offense. And that's what Dan Mullen's been doing. Weirdly, in this era of you need to be this, you need to be a CEO, this and that, he's going back to kind of just being a ball coach, and it's really worked for them. And in the Mountain West, that's kind of weird, and all those other things. Are they? They're not Pac-12 yet.
I think they're still Mountain West. Yeah.
That realignment. They could do some damage. I don't know if they still have Alex Orgy. If so, that'd be fun. Just a name to throw out there.
The Orgy party.
And I think the only other team I care about kind of is Memphis. I think they kind of regressed because Silverfield's not there anymore. He's at Arkansas. So they're my favorite sleeping giant team because they have the FedEx money because the guy went to FedEx went to Memphis and has those connections. I don't know if that really plays off, but I'm curious in James Madison, curious in UNLV, and USF is spending. So they're a team that has my attention, to say the least.
Well, I also Boise State's coach didn't leave either. So I just that is it's just interesting though. Out of all these teams, the changing of the coaches, he's still kind of there. So it'll be interesting. Now they were not good last year at all.
I think the group of five is so hard because it's like, okay, whose head coach didn't get poached because they had 2 winning seasons? Who didn't lose 90% of their roster because they played well and were all conference and then got pulled up to, a Power 4 team? It's so difficult, going into the season. And with Billy Napier going back to JMU, that kind of tells me he has an idea of wanting to get back into the Power 4 because that just seems like the jumping point recently for you. If you coach at JMU and you are successful, you'll get a good job somewhere in the Power 4. So, it's difficult because this new era in college football, you have to really know every single, like Alabama. We have an idea of Alabama. I haven't been following Alabama super closely. I know an idea of what they look like, but some of these group of 5 teams, I don't know. Last year they were terrible, or last year they were really good. I don't know what their roster looks like. I don't know who they recruited or who they transferred or who left, so. Group of 5 is always interesting, and I think that's a lot of fun. Part of the USF, they went on a great run last season. JMU, Tulane. So I'm excited to see how these, who gets to go, who's going to go to South Carolina, or who's going to go to Wisconsin. If those coaches end up getting fired. So that kind of, when we talk about Group 5, that's kind of the stuff I look for regular season. Who's doing well? Whose coach is probably going to leave?
Trevor the capitalist, who's going to take over the smaller and absolutely absorb the company damn near. Jesus Christ. I will say it's also what makes this harder is that there's just so much turnover.
Yeah.
Right? These, to your point, Trevor, that these teams get mauled in the offseason, especially if a coach goes to a bigger place. Who's not in this graphic? North Texas. North Texas had one of their best years in program history last year. Their head coach isn't there. Their quarterback isn't there. And a lot of the pieces are right now in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Yep.
Right? That's just kind of the reality of the situation. It's fun to some degree because that's also how you make an Indiana this world, right? Where a lot of those key pieces in the success early at Indiana has been those James Madison transfers, those 3-star, 2-star guys that made their way there, et cetera. You guys know the story. But it also means that James Madison, when they made the playoff against Oregon, did not look like the same James Madison team and some of the same James Madison players that are holding up a college football title. So I go back and forth because you're kind of turning into a borderline farm system to some degree, but it does make it gives it a new reason to pay attention to. But it is harder for stability, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean the unknown. We won't really know about some of these teams until week 12, where we're like, oh, that team is undefeated still, Yep. So it'll be very fascinating to watch it play out for the non-powers. All right, here's our first big power conference, the Big 12. Last year, Texas Tech won the conference, of course, and went on to the playoff, losing to Oregon. 4 new coaches joined the conference. Jimmy Rogers at Iowa State, Colin Klein back at his alma mater of Kansas State, Eric Morris, of course, Jerry just mentioned it. He's at Oklahoma State now, and Morgan Scaley is at Utah taking over for Kyle Winningham. Yeah, I mean, when I look at the Big 12, it's kind of it always just feels like a mess of a conference because I don't know what I'm going to get myself into when I watch it. I know there's going to be great offense. Some teams are going to be really good defensively, and it's just going to be who can kind of survive the internal devouration that happens in that conference. You know, you have good teams, and then they lose 2 in a row, and it's just one of those things. When I look at scheduling, though, because a lot of it, I don't know who I think is going to be good. So when I looked at the schedules for everybody, like I think Texas Tech's probably the favorite and probably wins the Big 12. BYU, I think, is right there. They don't play each other this year. Last year, they played each other twice, and Texas Tech beat them both times, once in the regular season and then in the title game. So I kind of think you have those 2 teams and then maybe everybody else. It'll be interesting to kind of see the reinsurgence of maybe an Arizona State now that Sam Leavitt's no longer there. I think the sneaky team, Jared talked about it a little bit, kind of spoiled it for me. I think Oklahoma State is a sneaky, could they win 9 games and maybe 10 games just based off their schedule? They really only have 2 tough games when you look at Oregon and Texas Tech. And then they bring in, I think it was over 30 guys from North Texas. Drew Mestemaker comes in at quarterback, who led the country last year in passing. Caleb Hawkins is the running back who was very good last year. I think we're now in this age of looking at these guys coming from smaller schools to power conferences and can maybe make a quick impact like the Kurt Signetti did. I don't know. There's kind of something about Oklahoma State that I just kind of feel like in this conference, looking at their schedule, they have a quarterback. There's something I like about him.
I mean, it's, we talked about Texas Tech's kind of the team here. Texas Tech spent the money. They've done the things, et cetera. Even with what's funny is for the first time, I think Texas Tech has been the receiver and the main story in college football in the state and in the country, right? Which is very fascinating to me. The nice thing for them is that last year quarterback play was not that good. The backup who came in, I think, against that BYU game was pretty good. It's probably going to start here too. So you're fine there. I think that this is kind of their conference to go. My eyes on Houston. Houston's weird. Houston has Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz is one of the most underappreciated, under-talked about coaches. You have Connor Wegman there, and we talked about valuing starting or return starters. Former A&M guy in Connor Wegman. He had a pretty good season last year. They kept a lot of the other guys around him. They snuck if I remember 10 wins last year. I could see that. And if you really appreciate returning production, et cetera, returning quarterbacks, Arizona feels like a prime spoiler candidate with Noah Fafita. He doesn't have as much great wide receiver talent, right? He had Tedro McMillan all those years ago. But you have your last year, possibly, who knows with all these NCAA rules nowadays, Fafita. If you believe in that type of, return, production, et cetera, he's right there. And Klein at Noah State is fascinating with Avery Johnson there. Avery Johnson was the star gem quarterback guy. Oh my God, and if he's from the in-state, it's oh my God, we kept the in-state kid. He's a 5-star. They brought him in early. He's had some really high highs and some really low lows. Klein coming at this time is interesting because if they didn't get him this year, I don't know when they would have, because I think Klein takes another job. And it feels like a lot of things had to go right to bring the homegrown guy, this figure of the program back. So there's a lot riding on that, I think, a little bit earlier than people are going to give it credit for. I'm not as high as you are, Caleb, on Oklahoma State. There's just so much to rebuild there. And, there's nothing left. I'm questioning the money spending there because they had to divert some of Gundy's contract before he was fired to NIL, et cetera. And their longtime big-time booster, if I remember, died a couple years ago, which has changed the athletic programs kind of period. I see the vision a little bit with it, but I'm not 100% sold. I do think Arizona State takes a step back. We talked about Baylor and their struggles. And Utah is just going to be fascinating. I think it's the other team I'm really keeping an eye on because, as you talked about, their new coach, he's really the coach in waiting for Whittingham. So Whittingham stepped down partially so Scally could take over. But with everything that happened, this was not the cleanest transition, as we know. When we talk about Michigan, one of the things I'm going to mention, and I'll mention it probably in an hour because we're going to be out, right? Is a lot of the pieces, both coaching and players, etc., were poached from that roster.
Yep.
It was not clean. It did not look well. There's, I think, borderline legal action or a lot of like chit chatter about that too. So it's fascinating because Whittingham did a lot for the program. We can get there later. But we're going to see a different Utah, in my mind, than we've seen in a long time. But also, how far does Scally stray from that world? I don't know, because he's come up from Whittingham, and he's a defensive-minded coach. So it also makes it easier for a team like a BYU, et cetera, to really do some damage, because I'm a little worried it could be a down year, but Dampier's still there as their quarterback, and he's a certified playmaker. So it is weird. It's a weird conference, but with some of these new coaches coming in and the right amount of returning production from especially the quarterback position in some of these places, I think it could get really messy really quick, especially if Texas Tech falls into their own hype and kind of has this offseason that's had so much at them. If there's any crack here, one of those teams could definitely jump in, and they have a couple of good teams in the conference that can play spoiler.
The one thing I have against Kyle Whittingham is that he's almost 70 years old and his name is Kyle. I don't know what that's all about. I didn't know they did that back then. I thought Kyle's just died once they turned 20 or something. So he's probably like the oldest Kyle in the world. Anyways, so Texas Tech is probably, like you guys said, the favorite. I saw a stat. So they won 11 games last year. Regular season games, and they won 11 games by 20 points or more, and they're the third team in the college football playoff era to do that. It was like Alabama and then somebody else. They reloaded a bunch of stuff. They have 3 returning all-conference starters. They also got a 5-star tackle. Will Hammond, the thing that interests me with him is that, if you guys remember, he tore his ACL, and I think that was in like October or something. It was kind of late, and they keep saying this is not happening, but it really feels like it. They give him a normal timetable to return, and then the Brendan Sorsby stuff happens, and then the coach is like, well, I don't like to say that like people are ahead of schedule when dealing with these things, but Will Hammond is ahead of schedule in his recovery. So he could have been like, super just weirdly good at recovering from something like this, or B, they're kind of rushing him into this, which could be something to look at, because Will Hammond is a guy who is kind of a dual threat quarterback. He can make a lot of plays with his legs. The one thing I really like about BYU is that we kind of talked about the farmer system, and the Big 12 can kind of feel like that too, right? Some of the Big 12 teams, look at Utah, where it's like they lose a lot of their talent to, the Big 10 or the SEC. BYU is kind of the opposite of that. Instead of like constantly trying to compete with Texas Tech in the transfer portal, they decided they wanted to retain players. Their sole focus was retaining players, and you can see that at the very top of their team, because Sataki was offered the Penn State job, and he basically said, "I'm not going anywhere." And we talked about Bear, the quarterback, Bachmeier. Is that his last name?
Yeah.
So we talk about retaining players. I think those are two. Those are some really good things about BYU. They also, I think they got the number 1 linebacker in the portal. So I think that dude had like 100 tackles, which is insane. So that's going to be nice. Another team, Utah. Devin Dampier, I think, is probably the most elusive quarterback in college football. And they got, absolutely what they lose. They lost the offense coordinator, 2 offensive linemen, went to the NFL. Their sack leader and top corner went with Whittingham. That kind of sucks. But Devin Dampier threw for 24 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And they added 2 receivers that combined for almost 1,700 yards through the transfer portal. And then I have Houston. They have 13 starters and 8 all-conference players that they got from the portal. And Connor Wigman threw for 2,700 yards and 25 touchdowns, and rushed for 700 yards, 36 total touchdowns. So I think that's another team where They have just a great offense. They were 6-1 in one-score games. That a lot of that can be kind of luck. How that goes. But yeah, I think those are probably the top 4 teams: Texas Tech, BYU, Houston, and Utah. Which is funny because Utah. I think Utah has recovered well from losing Whittingham, and then having their coach being there for a decade also helps. So
My thing with Utah is like if Kyle Whittingham was the coach, I'd be like, all right, they're probably in contention to win the conference, guaranteed 10 wins. But my fear is you lose the offensive coordinator who Dampier was with at New Mexico State, then was brought to Utah with him. He now doesn't have him anymore. And now I just feel like it was kind of one of those things where they were ready to move on, but Kyle Whittingham still had juice left in him as a coach. And so now you don't know what you're going to be. And also BYU lost their defensive coordinator to Michigan as well. So that will be kind of interesting to see how that kind of works out. But yeah, that's my thing with Utah. It's like if Kyle Whittingham was a coach, I'd be like, all right, I'm right up there with, maybe they could probably win the Big 12. He's not there. There's just something about it that I kind of feel like Kyle Whittingham's going to end up winning this divorce, if you want to call it that. And I don't think they're going to be bad, but I just don't think we're just so used to Utah being consistently there every year. I don't know if that is fully going to be the case.
Well, and two, it's like the kind of to help your argument with like him winning the divorce is if you win the Big Ten, you're probably a national champion. You are at least you have a very good shot. If you win the Big 12, you make the college football playoff. Like like even if Utah is the best team in the Big 12, they're not even necessarily a contender for the national championship. But I don't expect Michigan to be in a national. I think they could potentially make the playoffs. That's probably about as good as I have them right now. But I think that the tiers to it now, where he's just upgraded so much that they would have to do a lot to make up for losing him or to compete with what he's going to do.
No, I mean, I'll let me knock us out here.
Yeah, no, you're good.
The bottom tier of the Big 12 is just bad.
Yes.
It's also what doesn't help this conference is even your middle tier opponents are not that good, right? TCU I think gets the benefit of the doubt of this big time. They're probably just gonna be fine. TCU is like a solid, they're just solid every year. That really helps. But Colorado is really hard to predict every year, and outside of their transformative seasons under Deion, they've really struggled. Iowa State has been on top of near the top of this conference. They've lost their transformational head coach to Penn State. I think they regress. Cincinnati's hard to really see a lot of light here. Scott Satterfield's been below expectations, and their one really shining, big shining star in Sorsby, one left, and now 2 was not in college football. Kansas, I'm going to only say mean things, so I'll stop there. And Baylor is a really hard thing to hit and, predict. We have DJ Lagway there. I also think because the middle tier of this conference is kind of what are we going to talk about UCF about? What are we going to do? Scott Frost is just there. And guess what? The beauty of Scott Frost a couple years ago when you're trying to make the playoff and you have your banner for the undefeated season, boy, that same energy ain't there right now. That's for sure. But that helps these upper tier teams that are trying to make a move do something, because I do see the back end door of instead of getting beat up in the Big Ten or going through the SEC slate, if you get a week where it's week 7 and you're Baylor and you're trying to make a move here and you get Colorado who's now starting to feel some depth problems. They're not really that good. You can move here. I think the biggest question mark that we haven't talked about a lot, and I just don't know what to make of them, is Arizona State. I think Dillingham's a fantastic coach and has done a really good job there, but they've lost a lot of that talent in the initial wave, and I don't know how they've rebuilt. Now, they started to throw some money behind him, and he was a guy that got the Michigan buzz, right? Maybe Michigan will get him, and Arizona State committed to him. Yep. It also kind of comes with a new set of pressure, though, because this is something that I think with a couple of other coaches, he's used that goodwill that he's bought at Arizona State, that playoff run, et cetera, to get more money, get more funding, et cetera. Now you have to perform and continue to perform. And I think that's going to be a challenge for the upper tier of this conference. And I think the question we have a lot of them is the bottom could fall out very quickly. The bottom could fall out at Arizona State this year. It feels like a year that can happen. The bottom could fall at Texas Tech even. And Texas Tech's probably the most solid roster and is a good playoff team in my mind. Their bottom could fall out. Utah's bottom thing could fall out real quick. And the same thing with BYU. If their defensive coordinator doesn't figure it out like Jay Hill did, et cetera. If Bear Bachmeier regresses. I thought Bear Bachmeier was fine. He kind of got thrust in the situation last year. He didn't wow me. he got better, but he doesn't give me like, oh my God, he was fantastic. And some of those skill players are not there, right? Parker Kingston's had the level of issues, etc. And some of the other skill players they have are solid, but aren't transformative. And I think he's just a fine quarterback. So it doesn't help that the bottom tier of this conference is really bad, because it makes it hard for us to prognosticate how good the upper tier of this conference can be. And it feels a little Macish in some degree. I feel like with the Mac, all you can do every year is just say, like, you have a chance. No matter who you are, you have a chance. And for the most part, the Big 12 feels the same way, except Texas Tech is spending.
Well, it doesn't help a conference that, like to Trevor's point, Texas Tech won by an average of 20 points, and then you get in the playoff and you can't even score a touchdown against Oregon.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where your conference is just kind of looked at as just like, yeah, there's just those crazy teams out there that put up a lot of points and kind of just kill each other every week. So it's really tough to take serious until you kind of see. Now, granted, Arizona State 2 years ago probably should have beat Texas in that playoff game. Yes. But when you have a team like Texas Tech that was so dominant in your conference, you get the first round bye, you play Oregon, and then you just get obliterated, and you have no offense. Your defense that was supposed to be good doesn't play the greatest. It's a conference that nobody's going to take, I would say, seriously. And then you compare them to the ACC, where we'll talk about them next, where their conference title team didn't even make the damn playoff. So it's tough when you kind of view them from like, what are these teams going to be? Because who knows? I mean, TCU could be really good, or Colorado. We just don't know, just based off of how everything else plays out.
Well, and I think too, what we kind of talked about with Josh Hoover and like his turnover issue. Like I said, he played 31 games, had 42 interceptions. TCU kind of goes the exact opposite way. And they get Jaden Craig, who was a 3-year starter at Harvard, and he threw 52 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So it's kind of like the antithesis of Josh Hoover, right? It's like in the transfer portal, he's probably the guy who takes care of the ball the most. And I think they wanted to, that was their glaring issue with Josh Hoover. And Arizona State, too, they lost 18 starters in the transfer portal, which is insane. Like it's a complete rebuild. But they also get the Kentucky quarterback who started 10 games, Cutter Boley or whatever. And he had a 65% completion percentage. He was a good quarterback. He had a big arm, and he played well. So they have 2 returning starters on offense, 10 new starters on defense, and a brand new offensive line. So I like Jerry said, I really like Kenny Dillingham. I think he's a great coach, but they have like a severe uphill battle with just how much they lost in the transfer portal. So I'm interested. Like Jerry said, the rest of the conference, there's not much to talk about. And it's anyone's ball game, really. Except, Texas Tech spends a lot of money. So
does West Virginia still play Pitt? Like that's the only thing.
I believe. Well, that and Rich Rod's back as their coach. That's the only.
Well, that's year 2. We already knew that. That's old news. But I'll look right now here if West Virginia still plays Pitt.
I feel like they do. It's a massive rivalry.
It is. The backyard brawl is fantastic. But I think that's the only game that, in my mind, I care about for Pitt. I'm looking at football history. Can you give me this year's schedule, please? I'm asking nicely. This is great podcasting, by the way.
I might have, Jerry. Let me look here. I may have.
How many? If you have the West Virginia schedule printed, I might have to call a hotline.
They do not play Penn State. They play Coastal Carolina, UT Martin, Virginia, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Arizona, Cincinnati, TCU, Tech.
Ooh, boy.
Do you want home and away schedules? They play home, neutral, home, away, away, home, away.
And that concludes our West Virginia preview.
Yep.
They don't play. That's all I really thought would matter. They play Virginia, though, and they might get slaughtered in that game.
That's a neutral site game. I don't know where the neutral site is being played.
Let's see here. I have the schedule up here. Let's see. Tickets are $117, by the way, to that game.
Maybe we should go, boys. Take the show on the road.
Yeah. My computer's struggling. It's at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. 2 teams from neighboring states are going to go to a different state to play a neutral site. Yes! Oh, I love this sport. Sometimes it is so dumb. There we go. That way, though, we can hit our quota of talking about everyone in the conference. Please get me to the ACC. I do not want to talk about it. We've done what we can. Thank you so much.
We've now moved to the Atlantic Coast Conference. Of course, it's a conference, like I just mentioned, that had their champion not make the playoff, ended up 8-4. Manny Diaz, who was the coach at Miami at one point, fired, goes up to Duke, wins the conference title in the ACC before Miami does. Crazy. And then Miami ends up going to the national title game, of course, being the only team to make the playoff and where they lost to Indiana. We have 3 new coaches in the conference. Josh Lapupo. What's his name? Lapuo? Lapoy? Okay, who knows?
Jesus Christ.
He's at Cal. We have Tavita Pritchard. I can say that one. He's at Stanford. And then we have James Franklin at Virginia Tech. So we have 3 new coaches. Lapoy is the guy's name, eh?
Yeah, Lapoy.
I need some accents over names. Lapupo? They may be Lapupo. Who knows? I'm actually very high on Cal.
Say the quarterback's name while you're at it if you're so high on Cal.
I don't know the quarterback. I know he's a freshman last year. He's a lefty, and he could sling it. That's what
Second Portelli, you don't got that one in the bag? Come on,
no,
big dog.
I don't, Jerry.
It's preview season.
I just know that he's a good quarterback, and he was a freshman last year, and he's a lefty. That's all I know. Okay? I won't talk about that kid until the draft in 2 years, and then I'll get my hype on him. Okay? That's what I look at. Look, this is like a one-team conference. Yet again, but it's a one-team conference and maybe Miami that I don't fully trust just based off of some things, even though they did go on a run. Look, I think Miami dominates. I think they probably go 11-1, where they slip up in a game somewhere. I don't know if that's in conference or to Notre Dame. I just kind of feel like that's just kind of what's going to happen. Clemson, the unknown quarterback situation, I don't know. They also have a tough schedule. They open with LSU on the road. They have to play Miami. They have to play Florida State. I don't know what Florida State's going to be. Georgia Tech could be good, and they also play South Carolina. So there's just a lot of like weirdness that can kind of happen there. So quarterback-wise, I think Cal could win 9 games just based off of the quarterback and kind of the weirdness. They had some fun moments last year. Where they were in some games. Weren't they up on Miami at one point? Miami came back or something like that. So I like them. Pitt's always in the mix. They're always just kind of going to be there, as they probably will win 9 games just based off of what Pat Narduzzi does. The quarterback comes back, who was a freshman last year. That was Eli Holston, right? See, I know that guy.
Mason Heichel. You're wrong there.
God damn it. God damn it. I thought I knew it. Louisville, I think, could be in the mix. Their running back comes back. Florida State, if they don't win 8 games, I don't know what's going to happen with them. The 2 curiosities I really have in this conference are Virginia Tech, who I think they can start out 4-0, and we're thinking, man, okay, here we go. Here we go. Is this, maybe College Game Day comes to a game. They have VMI. I have no idea who the hell that team is. So I'm assuming some Virginia team. Old Dominion, Maryland, Boston College. I think they start 4-0, and we're like, all right, James Franklin, he's back. He's rejuvenated. And then they got to play Pitt, Cal, Georgia Tech, Clemson, SMU, Stanford, Miami, and Virginia. Kind of tough. So yeah. I'm very fascinated to see what Virginia Tech is. And then the other one I'm fascinated just because I love chaos and I love destruction of people, North Carolina. It's going to be a complete fucking dumpster fire. They have 4 I can tell you right now, guaranteed losses, easy losses on the schedule. They have to play Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, and Miami. I guarantee they lose all 4 of those games. So I am intrigued to see what Jordan Hudson has to say about North Carolina when we get to Miami on Halloween. This is so fitting. On Halloween in North Carolina, Bill Belichick, who's kind of known as like the Sith Lord of football, it could all end right there. I mean, 4 easy losses. They could be, what would that be? What? 2-4 at that point? 2
Oh
and
my
6?
gosh.
I'm just intrigued to watch the chaos burn when it comes to, some people just want to watch the world burn. I'm one of those people at this point because it's going to be a fucking disaster. I feel like, because I think there's a lot of stuff going on that nobody knows about, and it's boiling to come out.
What's scary about North Carolina? They're like, I think, one fumble and one bad play from a bowl game. Like, they were 4-8 last year, and they had some tough losses, which should scare the heck out of us. I think weirdly, I wouldn't be shocked if we were closer to more successful North Carolina that
Wow.
like in the start of the season was so bad, imploded, all this, but like slowly became better and became competent. They've gotten some like their tight ends from like I forget like the Patriot League, so that feels very on brand by the way. So have that one at you. My question with the ACC is who's going to take the step up to be in the ACC championship game with Miami. Miami, in my mind, is a top 5 team in the country right now, and they have put the pieces together to make a deep run. They've really gotten better in a lot of spots, right? They got better at quarterback, at wide receiver, which is already a really good room. Their defense is still solid. Miami's putting it in. And mind you, Miami took some of the pieces from the ACC title championship team and Duke and some of the really important parts there to make them better. I think Duke regresses, right? Cal's a team I could see step up. Can Louisville do it? Louisville's a team every year we talk about, hey, they have this here, right? Their running back room's really good. Quarterback room leaves a lot to be desired. The defense has a lot to replace, but you still have some impact players like Antonio Watts, Taylor Holloway still there. So they can play there. Does Virginia take the step this year, right? The other team that was in the ACC title game last year. They went transfer portal heavy last year with a lot of seniors. This year, they brought in 30 guys. Only 14 of them are seniors. I think that's a big step. Can they continue that, right? Can SMU return back to the playoff? That's a possibility, right? I think one team in this conference or one spot in the conference championship is there. It's who's going to be the second tier. Georgia Tech, I'm very fascinated in. I'm really excited to learn how good of a coach Brent Key is. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's a good coach. But he also had probably one of the a defining quarterback for that program in front of him. They gave Georgia hell the last 2 years. They've been a really tough out. They don't have that same love. But if I remember, they have a fun transfer. I have it in my notes here. Give me 1 second. I should have done this smarter. Now we'll get back to them later. Syracuse, I'm also fascinated. I think they kind of bounce back. I'm going to give Fran Brown the benefit of the doubt. I think they got screwed by Angeli getting hurt, and they didn't have the depth this year. What they've done, which I'm curious about, is they get a lot of kids who had a lot of stars but just haven't worked out. Like one of my favorite transfers is that Malachi Nelson is currently in the quarterback room of Syracuse. In case you didn't know, Malachi Nelson's been like everywhere in the sun, but he was a former 5-star kid. But that's kind of been Fran Brown's ethos, etc. Is getting these highly talented guys. And 2 years ago, that's a 10-win team under Kyle McCord. And then this last year, it's one ACL injury to your quarterback, and you're 4-8, and you're struggling. Well, let's just say we talked about Stanford and be done with it. I have no clue what's going to happen there.
They're building.
Sure, man. Good luck.
Good luck.
You know that Wake Forest had a winning record last year? Do you guys remember that?
I forgot doing the research. I forgot that
they were 9-4.
No, Dave Clawson was not their coach anymore.
Yeah, shout out Jake Dicker. Didn't get the COVID vaccine, and now is at Wake Forest. Their defense is good. And another fun one, if you want to talk about chaos. Okay, UNC's former quarterback, Gio Lopez, who struggled, right, at UNC, is Wake Forest's QB now. If he were to break out, you want to talk about your chaos potential, Caleb, of UNC just crashing and burning. How about the subplot of Wake Forest, who no one ever talks about except us on this podcast because we care about all the conference doing so, actually having a decent season?
I love it. I'd love to see it, actually.
See, I want to make sure we get all out of 11. Everyone gets a high five. I think Duke's going to kind of stink. That's the other thing I want to talk about. Oh, here it is. Georgia Tech's QB, Fernando Mendoza's little brother, Alberto.
Oh, of course.
And another name that people are going to remember, Justice Haynes from Michigan.
Yes, the running back from Michigan. Yes.
So there is a Haynes on the roster. Fear not. Everything's okay. But, yeah, it's who steps up in that group. Does Kevin Jennings at SMU make the jump?
I like SMU sneaky on them. They're
good. That's kind of been my question though with the ACC the last couple of years, because when Clemson was real good, it was who was just below them, who could notch and beat Clemson. and then it became Miami. Now Clemson fell off, right? Like we don't have that second team that's real good, or that second tier kind of just moves a lot. And once you get into the middle of this conference, I think the middle tier to the bottom tier of this conference can be better. There is potential there. Like again, I go back to Syracuse. They were like one of the worst teams in the country, but they beat Clemson last year, right? And that was supposed to be a good Clemson team, etc. So it's a little wacky, but I want somebody else to step up, and whoever makes that conference game is going to have to go through a lot of mid to get there. But there's a lot of opportunities. You can sell me a lot of different ways on these teams that somebody else will play Miami in the conference championship. After that, though, I don't know if they're a playoff team per se.
Yeah, I feel exactly like you do, Jerry. It's like who is going to take on Miami, and it's really probably like Clemson, maybe Duke, Georgia Tech, um, Virginia. I mean, and SMU, Virginia Tech. I just love that. I just really wish. I don't know. It's just a beautiful thing, Caleb. I love your point where they're probably going to start 4-0, and everyone's going to be like, he's. But also, James Franklin's biggest issue was beating good teams, like teams that were ranked. He was notorious. When we get to that, I'll look at the stat in the Big Ten, but he was notoriously bad at beating like ranked teams. So, or at least top 10 teams. So, probably not Virginia Tech. I am intrigued by Georgia Tech. I did not know that Fernando Mendoza's brother was there. And then the Michigan running back, that was big news. Clemson, I just want them to turn it around a little bit. I think though, with like you're allowed to have a bad season. Now Clemson hasn't been like amazing, top of the world, and then had like a bad season, and then they're kind of coming back. But you're allowed to fumble a season every now and then, and then you can still perform at a high level because there are guys who still want to go to Clemson and play for Dabo. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Clemson kind of crawl their way back to the top of the ACC, and then face Miami. I think Miami is an actual national champion contender. I don't think anyone else in the ACC is, but there are teams who Georgia Tech. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the college football playoff, or if Clemson plays really well, maybe they can make it. Virginia had a great season last season. Duke, some Pitt, so teams like that. Where it's like there's just some wins that have to go your way, and then there is a viable way to get into the college football playoff. So, who's going to take on Miami? That's the question of the ACC.
I have another team that's sneaky. NC State. CJ Bailey comes back at quarterback, and if you look at their schedule, they do not have to play Miami, and they do not have to play Clemson in the ACC. Very, very favorable. And they don't have to play SMU either, who I think SMU can be potentially good. They're just sneaky. It's one of those where if their quarterback can kind of put it together, which he's not been able to, they have some weapons, they have some talent. There's potential that they could be a team that kind of sneaks up on some people. But I was just looking at their schedule. They don't play Miami and they don't play Clemson. A lot of teams in the ACC would take that.
My only problem, who is CJ Bailey throwing to? I think the defense will keep him in a lot of games. It's a very solid defense. I think CJ Bailey is a solid quarterback. That returning production point sits well with me. I'm just kind of concerned that there's not much else around him. And Dave Doran's not turning out pros like he used to. I think that's a weird thing about NC State is you usually get like an offensive line guy or defensive line guy on like these 8-4 teams that were just like, oh yeah, that's a first round guy, even if this team hasn't figured it out. That churn hasn't been the same, and they've kind of gotten rated a little bit in the portal, so I worry about that with CJ Bailey being there. Our Boston College preview was already done. Bill, yeah, they're going to be bad. And that's just kind of it. For Virginia Tech, a date I want everyone to circle, Saturday, September 19th. And that run, Caleb, that you're talking about, the Maryland game, I think could make or break their season. And the reason being is that if there's any team that James Franklin hates, just flat out hates more than anybody, it is Maryland, where he was once the coach in waiting on years ago. And between a lot of administrative stuff, it falls apart. And that leads him to go to Vanderbilt and leads this whole thing. I think this was Stephen Godfrey was reporting a while ago that he would meet with James Franklin here and there every couple of years. and there is still like when head coaches try to get the job, they do like a big binder of stuff, and they go through all these things, etc. That Maryland binder is still up there in his office all these years later. This is after Vanderbilt, and then like all those years of Penn State that was still there. If they win that game, I don't know what happens actually, because I feel like that could be such an emotional, get the troops going. Hey, you know, these guys, all this and that. Like if they win, I don't know if they can coast through that, or if it's too much emotional burn, or if that's the jumping point between that. And I think the Commonwealth Bowl here, the Commonwealth Clash, what they call it now, my apologies, is going to be fascinating between Virginia and Virginia Tech. I'm very curious about Prabula at Virginia. Tony Elliott's an offensive head coach, and Chandler Morris last year had a really good year, but they really portaled really heavy. And I know that this year, like I mentioned earlier, they have less guys that are seniors in that portal class. It's still 30 kids coming in after your really good year. So, you know, with NC State's who you throw the ball to, and the state of Virginia, really solid. They got two solid programs that have a lot of interesting storylines. But that's where the ACC gets fascinating. It feels like you can never count any of these teams out completely outside of Boston College. I'm okay with that one this year. But again, who's going to come in second? Who will push Miami? Even though I think Miami's kind of gotten themselves in a different tier. This feels like they've taken over that Clemson spot of being the team in the ACC. They may drop a game. That happens. But I don't think last year really proved to me that they're taking that step forward, because this was a team that had to really fight through the playoffs, and they beat teams, and they were in close games, and Cristobal didn't screw one up and all this other stuff. All the tropes like a Cristobal Miami have had last year, they kind of beat them. And think about it. They're one Carson Beck underthrown ball from us talking about them totally differently, right? Yeah. And they were one score away. And like Indiana was the better team in that game. I think that we all agree on that. But it wasn't like Indiana blew them out the water and all this. Those are two pretty evenly matched opponents that went in there. So it's hard for me. I think Miami's really good, and I think they've gotten better at the positions they struggled in. So everyone else around them has to figure that out. And I don't know if anyone in the ACC is really going to do that. But whoever gets there is going to have an interesting path to do it.
Yeah, they looked at Duke and they said, well, they have a really good quarterback. Let's take that guy, and look at them now. So they have a quarterback based off everything.
That's a big grab that we need to mention as well.
They also do it with the trenches, and that's the way you're going to win a lot of these games. And looking at some of the teams in the ACC, you're probably going to win games just based off that. So a little, I would say, a tier up over the Big 12, but we'll see how it goes. All right, moving on now. This is Jerry's conference. It just means more the Southeastern Conference. Of course, Georgia won the conference in 2025. They had 5 playoff teams. 5, Jerry. Look at you guys. 5 of them. Georgia, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Alabama. 6 new coaches joined the SEC. This was the year of turnover. Ryan Silverfield at Arkansas, Alex Golish at Auburn, John Summerall at Florida, Will Stein at Kentucky, of course, Lane Kiffin at LSU, and Pete Golding. Of course, it feels like Pete Golding's been the coach there for a while just because he coached them in the playoff, but this will be his first full season as their head coach. Looking at it, I think Texas may be the most talented team in the country, but their schedule is ferocious, out of conference and in conference. Georgia, I always say it when no one's talking about them. I feel like they're going to be good. Their quarterback comes back, and Kirby, they're going to figure it out on defense. It's just the weapons around him in the offensive line. Being able to run the ball, I think, is what's hurt Georgia the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think LSU's very talented. They're one of the more talented teams. It's just kind of going to be, is Lane Kiffin going to be blessed by the football gods, or is he going to have lightning struck down of him from the sidelines? Texas A&M brings their quarterback back. I like that. Ole Miss, I feel like they're gonna be a good team, but I feel like they're gonna regress a little bit. And I think offensively is where they're probably gonna progress the most. The vibe. Oklahoma, I don't really know. They kind of came out of nowhere last year, but John Mateer comes back. Alabama's the team for me. I don't think Alabama wins 9 games.
Oh, wow.
And it's when I kind of look at the schedule, so they play Florida State, who they lost to last year. I don't know if they'll lose that game again. South Carolina, who I think South Carolina is going to be better this year and was in a dogfight with Alabama last year and probably should have beat them. They play Georgia, which granted they've beaten Georgia, but they have to play Georgia. Tennessee, who I think will be improved this year. A&M, LSU, Auburn's going to be improved as well. I just don't know quarterback-wise and kind of the offensive line-wise and their inability to run the ball last year. I don't know. It's just a feeling that I have that I look at the other teams in the SEC and I feel like they're better than Alabama. And they have quarterbacks. Alabama, I don't know about the quarterback thing. And I don't want to base a lot off last year, but the Indiana loss to me was just kind of like one of those where it's just like, whoa. And I look at the other teams in the SEC and I don't know. I feel like they could win 9 games, but I don't know. I'm just not super high on Alabama.
It's just kind of how much do you either believe in Keelan Russell or Austin Mack? And I think that's a fair question. The hard part of Alabama is that the ethos of Alabama is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, Saban's still in the building, but the way Saban built those teams, if anything, feels more Kirby Smart-esque, right? Of these really good defenses and these stud skill players, right? Because, like, in the past, it's not like all the Alabama QBs have been godsend, God-tier guys. They've been solid. If anything, again, Georgia's kind of built what Alabama was. It's hard for me to completely discount that. I understand your curiosity, and with Alabama, and I see the vision there, it's tough for me to think that they get all the way through as well. Their defense just has to pick it up a bit because I don't know if Alabama fans could put up with – they'll win. If they win, they win. I think that's the biggest thing. That's number one. But if you're losing 35-30, it hurts more than when you lose 10-7. Because Bama was used to winning 10-7 football games. They're not used to almost like Big 12-ish vibes there. And that's a seat that can get hot quick. Kalen DeBoer wasn't on our list, but it does not mean he can't get there. Another guy who I think his seat is warm, even though he's got it all there, is Steve Sarkisian in Texas.
Yeah, I agree.
This has to be the year for Texas if it's going to be any year. Because it's not just Arch Manning. It is Cam Coleman. It is all these guys they've brought in. When I was doing my research and all this, it felt like Texas picked up almost any team that had a coach fired or struggled. The best player from that team went to Texas. This roster is insane. And if you don't get anything out of not just Arch Manning, but the roster around him, it's going to get real hot real quick. I think Ole Miss might go down a little bit. They have the talent to be good. I'm just not sold on Pete Golding. Pete Golding is there to keep people and keep the program afloat. And like with all the change and chaos, he was a good voice of reason, etc. But there was a reason he was a longtime DC where a lot of these big programs, but never took the step, right? And to take a step into this boiling hot situation at Ole Miss, it feels like a tough blow.
He also said, Jerry, he didn't want to be the head coach of that team or a head coach anyway.
But, like, that's the thing. At some point, he was that way. And, like, he stepped in and, mind you, he did a good job in the playoff, et cetera. But that was also with Charlie Weiss Jr. still having that offensive setup here. Now, they brought in a guy I think is from East Carolina who has a similar offensive build, right, and runs the offense similarly. So I see the vision there. It's just I don't know what to make of it because that's a very talented roster. It's really hard to count out Trinidad Chambliss. It's really hard to count out Kawan Lacey, but also some other pieces there like Caden Lee, et cetera, are not there. So it's not the same team. Texas A&M, it's battered Aggie syndrome. And the worst part is Texas A&M has actually become a really solid, consistent program, while Texas has gone up, up, and up because it almost feels like a one-game season, right? Like I think Elko's a good coach. I think A&M will be solid. You've got to beat Texas at some point. But he's doing just a good enough job for it not to be a problem. Oklahoma is also my other team I'm eyeballing. On a seat that could get hot quickly. They could be good, and I could still see them thinking about moving on. They have Jim Nagy as their general manager. He was the guy who used to run the Senior Bowl. So every year when you see the Senior Bowl highlights with all those guys wearing the helmets and all this stuff like that, he used to be the talent guy for that. Well, the way Nagy and Oklahoma have built the program around Venables is that they may not really need him, right? This is not as much like some of these other teams. You need Kirby Smart for Georgia to look the way it is. You need even Mike Elko to make A&M look the way it is. you don't really need Brent Venables to make Oklahoma look like Oklahoma right now. I don't know how much of the talent acquisition, et cetera, which is so vital in the sport, is Brent Venables. So if they struggle at the gate, et cetera, I can see that getting real interesting real quick. There's so much turnover that we get through all day. Your Missouri preview is they have to beat a ranked team. That's all. That's literally all I have. I don't know if Ahmad Hardy's going to be back. If he is, he's a sneaky Heisman candidate, but we don't know when he's going to be back. No one said anything. That's about it.
Who's playing quarterback?
Austin Simmons, who is from Ole Miss. Mizzou's passing game, it has the pieces to be all right, but it has struggled in years past. Jamal Roberts is a name to watch as RB2. He was really solid last year, and that 1-2 duo was one of the best in the country in my mind when it came to running backs. And if Ahmad Hardy does miss a couple weeks to start the season, Jamal Roberts is not Ahmad Hardy. That's fine, but he's a really, really good running back, and they had to do a big NIL campaign locally. Here he's from the St. Louis region, from the state, to get him back there. I'm trying to think of who else here. Lane Kiffin and LSU. It's either going to be a national title or 2 years we're talking about this job being open. There is so much that went into this. Like, the chaos and everything. Like, with Ole Miss, you almost feel bad, right? Which is weird for me to say I feel bad for the University of Mississippi about, like, almost anything. But, like, they got screwed in that process. Lane Kiffin came in. Lane Kiffin's already made his own headlines. Lane Kiffin has all this baggage. They did the whole documentary. He's got Sam Levitt. They went through all the hoops to get him. All this, all the money's being thrown in. They have all, like, the hype's there. And Lane Kiffin's a name that brings people. It's a name that gets visceral reaction. If LSU wants to be a villain, they have done it successfully. And if they can use that energy and be successful, LSU's going to be tough to stop. I think their offense will be obviously really good, but it will go over quick because you did not go through all these hoops. You did not get the governor involved and everything else for them to be 8-4. And that's the hard part. And it's such a volatile situation that if it doesn't go well quickly, I don't know what else happens. Any other teams you guys want me to talk about so you don't have to?
I mean, I think Mississippi State sucks again.
You're going to fire Jeff Levy probably. They've just been really bad in conference.
Vanderbilt, I think, regresses. I don't think that's –
Curtis is interesting, their quarterback. He's that 5-star kid that went from Georgia to Vanderbilt. They'll probably regress, but I could see them being still kind of good. I don't think Stowers is still there, though.
I think – no, he plays for the Eagles now, I think. I think the two that I think are most interesting for me, if we're talking like not the top dogs in the SEC, are Tennessee and South Carolina, because South Carolina has the talent on both offensively and defensively. Can it come together? And Tennessee, where it feels like there is talent there, it just comes down to quarterback play. And it kind of looks like the redshirt freshman is going to beat out the true freshman.
You want to know a fun thing about Tennessee before I forget? You know who their defensive coordinator is right now?
I do not know that.
Jim Knowles.
Really? Oh, that's right. I did know that. I'm an idiot. I did know that. Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting. Yeah, and Tennessee kind of got screwed in all the – I don't say screwed. It is what it is with all the eligibility stuff. So I'm a little worried about that because the thing about Josh Heupel is he's a really, really good offensive mind. And when they're running, right? They're a fast-paced team, et cetera. As a defensive coordinator, I would hate to be the DC because if they're struggling, it's 30 seconds and guys are back on the field. When it's working, though, it's 63-24 like they did in Missouri when I watched them years ago. I still will never forget that. That was a whooping to the highest degree. South Carolina's question is simple. We talked about in the hot seat stuff. It's Lenora Sellers, Nick Harbor, guys like that who have been immensely talented. Will they figure it out or not? I think that's kind of it. When we get into new coach world, we can do that real quick too. John Summerall has a lot to fix in Florida, and I don't know how much time they're going to give him. I like what he says. He's made some weird headlines, though. That's weird. I don't really feel confident with Ryan Still revealed at Arkansas. He was fine at Memphis. He wasn't fantastic at Memphis. And Memphis has a lot of, like, Memphis kind of has the same problem Colorado State has, which is when you look at it, it's like, oh, this program could be really good. They're in a great town. They have money. They have this. And then never really comes to fruition. Memphis has a little bit of that problem, but, like, they were never fantastic. They were never the top of the G6 when they really could and had a lot of advantages to do so. So I don't know how that translates in Arkansas, a program that has struggled mightily with that. And I don't know how much money they're going to keep throwing, especially when you have a guy like Calipari at Arkansas who's given them success. That does matter to some degree. Alex Golesh, good luck. Auburn is such a mess. And my question is not as much about the on-field product. I think Byron Brown will bring him some talent at QB. They've brought some pieces in and stuff like that. But there's a reason they keep going through head coaches. It's not because all the coaches stink. I'm not a Hugh Freeze fan. That's fine, right? But it's the booster culture there is struggling, and it is not making it any better. What might help is the fact that this is probably the most vulnerable you'll get Alabama in a really long time. That might be more successful for Alex Golesh than anything he does on the field. Because if you can win the Iron Bowl because Alabama doesn't look like Alabama for the first time in a long time, that's going to change a lot of people's mind about you, even if guys like even Hugh Freeze or what was the Boise State coach before him? Why am I blanking? Brian Harsin.
Yeah.
Where they were running into the end of Nick Saban and even early Kalen DeBoer that had some talent, etc. A team I'm watching, this is the final team of the conference, but I saved the best for last to some degree. Will Stein in Kentucky is fascinating. They've put some money in there. And Will Stein is giving this very CEO-like approach. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon. And while they still have a lot to do, I don't think they're going to be crazy bad. Kenny Minchie's here for my Notre Dame folks.
Really good quarterback.
He's fun. And they've gotten some other folks from Texas, Oklahoma. They've kind of pieced together a lineup here. He just kind of has that vibe of like they could do some damage. Now, I think also part of that is like in the SEC world. You get either crazy, absurd headlines or no headlines. And Will Stein's kind of gotten a lot of buzz, and I'm just fascinated by that. It may not be a fruition of this year, but with how toxic it kind of got at the end with Mark Stoops because he brought them Kentucky football to the highs they had not seen in a long time, and the fact Kentucky basketball is kind of down, there could be some sneaky potential here. The problem is I think the middle tier of the SEC gets too much love. This comes from a guy who's benefited from it personally. Missouri is like number 25 in the polls right now in the AP. Don't really know if we've earned that. I'm always pessimistic. Again, I'm a White Sox fan at heart. Comes with the territory. But I look at these. Let's look at the playoff teams right here. I think Georgia's fine. A&M, I could see the case here. Ole Miss will be tough. Oklahoma will be tough. Alabama will be tough. Texas, I think, takes one of those spots. But Tennessee has obvious flaws. I don't know who's playing quarterback. Oklahoma and Mateer, they were ugly. They won, but they were ugly. South Carolina is very hit or miss, right? Vanderbilt was a team that snuck around the playoff conversation. They got beat in their bowl game pretty bad things by Illinois. And they did not look like the better team. And that was with a Vanderbilt that brought out most of the roster. We can't play everyone transferred card, all stuff like that. I think the middle tier of the SEC needs to start proving some stuff. I go back to, again, my Missouri Tigers that you haven't beat a ranked team in a while. You need to do something like that. Vanderbilt has beat other ranked teams that were in the middle tier of the SEC, right, this year. Tennessee did the same thing that got them to a playoff run. So until that tier kind of carries its weight like it once did to some degree, I do think the upper tier of the conference, it's harder for me to give them the same benefit of the doubt, even if the stadiums are packed out on Saturday, even if you get the ESPN night game, etc. Granted, it's hard to put your trust in Texas. And I think they're the team that probably that has the best chance of winning the conference. But do you really trust Texas to do it?
I am interested in Florida. I think they could be a team that kind of plays spoiler a little bit. I think that they got a lot of good pieces with Summerall. Like we said, when a coach leaves and takes all their players with them, that can do some good things. I mean, there is a difference between, a Group 5 team and then the SEC. I really like Trinidad Chambliss, and I think that in college football specifically, you can be a little bit more dependent on your quarterback if he has a really exceptional play. I know he hasn't spent his entire, almost 5 years or 6 years or something in college football. That's at the D2 levels, a lot of it too. But I think there's got to be something said for a guy who's played 6 years of college football and had a successful season in the SEC of division. I mean, about as good as it gets. I'm really high on Trinidad. I know there are some other issues, but I think that in college football, you can sometimes lean on your quarterback to win you some games. The NFL and stuff, it's a lot harder for that to happen. It can happen, but I think college football, I think he has the ability to be the best quarterback in the SEC, which means potentially the country. So I expect him to, they can't completely just rely on him, but he can win them a lot of games. Texas, I agree with Jerry. What Jerry was saying, they have to win, like or be close to winning. I actually think they have to win a national championship. Like we were saying, this is probably the best roster in the country. This is the best roster that Texas has had in a long time. And if Sarkisian can't do it with this roster, then what roster does he need? What does he need then if he can't do it with this? Oklahoma, I think their defense is good enough to beat teams, and all you need is the offense to not make huge errors. I think Mateer is good enough to, if he can take care of the football, if he can stay healthy. Because remember, this Oklahoma team was pretty scary last season until he broke his wrist or broke his hand or something weird with his throwing hand, and then they kind of fell off after that. But I think this is an elite defense at Oklahoma, and if the offense can take care of the ball and convert when they should, I think this defense can carry them quite a ways. So I kind of like them maybe potentially getting to the playoffs. I mean, Georgia is probably my favorite to win the SEC again, or maybe Texas. Texas is probably my favorite, and then Georgia's not too far behind them. I would really love an Ole Miss to just come out of nowhere. I think that's a great story. I'm really excited for September 19th. That is Ole Miss versus LSU. I think that's going to have a lot of fun energy around it. That's only week 3, so hopefully both teams are relatively, undefeated, or I don't know exactly what their schedules look like. But yeah, Texas A&M, this is kind of a prove-it year for them. South Carolina, there's a lot riding on their season. I think I was playing college football the other day, and I was playing as LSU, and their tight end is a freak, dude.
Yes.
I don't know what his name is. I was looking at him afterwards because it almost felt like a creative player.
That's a Prince Will. I forget his last name.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Unalaman?
There you go.
He's like 6'8", right? He's like,
I mean, he's like, you guys gotta look at the camera for this.
God, I know we're not done doing it. We're not just keep going. Just stop.
He's like 6'7", and dude, he's a freak. Like
Freitas Green.
Yeah, he's insane. Like
6'7", 237 pounds.
He's so good that I had to go look him up afterwards. I'm like, is this a real player in college football? Like, he was insane, dude. So I'm excited to see. I mean, Sam Levitt coming to LSU is big. Arizona State looked decent until he got hurt last season. Then it kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. But yeah, the SEC is very interesting. I think a little bit. I think it might be the most interesting conference. I know we like to say now that the Big Ten is like the college football conference, and I still agree with that in a way. But I think this is the most interesting conference where there are so many teams that, I mean, you could maybe count on almost 2 hands that like teams that you wouldn't be super shocked that they were, in a conference champion position, and the schedules are brutal. If you don't, I mean, remember Auburn last year where they lost like 8 games within 1 score, and then and then they, or whatever, 6 games. Like, that's just what the SEC is, though. You'll just get that. So I think, like I said, this is the most interesting conference. I don't know if it's the best anymore, but I love when SEC football comes around because it's going to be crazy. It's going to be insane. So looking forward to it. Let's get to the Big Ten.
Quickly about Texas. Yeah, no one says,
Texas,
wow. They're going to, well, I kind of feel like USC did that to them back in the day. But I will say the interesting thing with Texas is Sark was doing his interview at the SEC Media Days, and I think he was with Paul Feinbaum. And Paul Feinbaum said, you brought in these, a bunch of these transfers. And he goes, we upgraded the roster. He goes, we basically kicked guys off our roster, told them to transfer because we wanted to upgrade those positions. That's very interesting that a coach is going to say, you know what? Yeah, we had good players, but we wanted better players. So we told guys to leave to upgrade. So there's pressure there by just saying that. And you got Arch Manning as your quarterback. So, you're expected to win the national title and him win the Heisman and him run off to be the #1 overall pick. So Texas is going to be very, very interesting when you look at it. All right, moving on to the Big Ten. This is, we are the voice of the Northern men up here.
Yeah.
That's what we are. This conference is, ran college football, showing off the trophies at media days. Why not? If Indiana can win it, anybody can win it. Is kind of the mantra. We look at Indiana won the conference last year. Of course, they had 3 playoff teams. Indiana ended up winning the national title. 4 new coaches joined the ranks of the conference here. Kyle Winningham at Michigan, Pat Fitzgerald at Michigan State, Matt Campbell at Penn State, Bob Chesney at UCLA. I will say, the Big Ten, it always feels like they always get very good coaches to join the conference. These are 4 coaches with a lot of experience. Kyle Winningham, of course, we've talked about it, a lot of experience. Pat Fitzgerald, 20 years at Northwestern. Matt Campbell, the only guy that can make Iowa State interesting and talk about when we look at college football. And Bob Chesney, he goes to James Madison. Everybody goes, you can't do what Cignetti did. He goes, watch this, takes him to the playoff. So the Big Ten upgrades with coaches. They've always done a very good job hiring good coaches. When I look at teams, I like Oregon a lot. I think I know everybody's big on Ohio State. I just feel like Oregon's the best team. The only thing with Oregon that kind of skews me is losing both coordinators, but Dan Lanning's a defensive guy and Dante Moore's your quarterback. I think you kind of figured that out.
Like Dylan Raiola is your backup.
Of course, Dylan Raiola. Why not? I like Ohio State, of course. Their schedule is not too crazy, but they do have to play Texas. They do have to play Indiana. They have to play USC. They play Oregon, and they have to play Michigan, of course. So their schedule, they're going to be a good team, but the schedule is pretty tough. I'm high on Penn State. Rocco Beck there at quarterback. Their schedule is very favorable.
Yeah.
They have to play USC and Michigan, and that's pretty much it when you look at the top.
Yeah, no Indiana, no Ohio State, no Oregon. It's crazy.
No. So I actually like Penn State to make the playoff.
This would be like a perfect James Franklin schedule for Penn State. This season would be great for him.
Yeah.
No top 10 team.
You go 10-2. I guarantee it. You go 10-2. I like Michigan as well. I think Michigan's going to be good. Bryce Underwood has a quarterback coach, an offensive coordinator. He actually has some stability coaching-wise. I like what they brought in transfer portal, what they already had, the returning young guys, and the running back that they have, his name's Hitter or something like that. That kid is a beast. The video of him running through the one machine and he almost knocked over the one tackling pad, I was sold as soon as I saw it. And I'm not a big fan of Michigan, of course. USC, I think, is good, but I don't know their schedule. They play Oregon, the Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana. I'm looking at like 9-3 for USC. Indiana, this is interesting. Their schedule's tougher this year than what they've had the last 2 years. So that's why I'm not like being like, oh, Indiana, they were good. I don't believe in it. I just think they take a step back because of the schedule. You play Nebraska, you play Ohio State, you play Michigan. You play those 3 in a row, 2 of those games on the road. And then you play Minnesota, and then you play USC. Schedule's a little tougher. I think that they're going to be good, but I look at like 9-3, 10-2. It's going to depend on how good Michigan is and how good USC is. So I'm not sitting here being like they're going to be awful. I just think the schedule is what's going to hurt them from being like potentially great. I look at other schools. I mean, I'll do Michigan State. If they win 6 games, I'll be surprised. Iowa, we already talked about, they'll be 8-4. Illinois regresses, losing their quarterback. Maryland's interesting. I assume they fire their coach midway through the season. Minnesota, PJ Fleck will go 7-5 somehow. Nebraska, I'm thinking like maybe 6-7 wins. There we go. If Trevor wants to throw it back up, maybe. I'm interested there. Northwestern, Chip Kelly, I have no idea what the hell that's going to look like. Probably they're going to do something. They're going to win a game they're not supposed to. Purdue, awful. Rutgers, awful. UCLA is interesting. Bob Chesney, can he get Nico to be decent? And what can they kind of do? Washington is sneaky to me as well. Jed Fish, you bring back the quarterback and Desmond Williams that didn't want to be there. My question is, who the hell is he going to throw to? You lose Boston, you lose some other guys. Jed Fish is a good coach, but I don't know if he's well-rounded. Wisconsin's sneaky because their schedule is not crazy. They do play Notre Dame, but you look in conference, it's Penn State, USC. That's it when you look at top echelon. Their conference schedule is Penn State, Michigan State, UCLA, USC, Iowa, Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, Minnesota, and they get to play. They have to go to Penn State, but they get USC at home. Wouldn't be shocked if they somehow go like 8-4, 9-3, and we look at Wisconsin and go, "Whoa!" The Big Ten is a lot of the scheduling for me and how I kind of view some of these teams.
I mean, I think the upper tier of the Big Ten is we have to just give it the credit that it's finally starting to get to deserve, right? Indiana's legit. They're a national title contender in my mind. The thing about Indiana that fascinates me, they're not shopping in the same basket they were a couple years ago.
No, it's very true. They've upgraded.
Like, okay, Josh Huber, I get it. There's some questions here. He's still a good quarterback. Nick Marsh, that's a big boy get, right? That's somebody that usually know Ohio State and Oregon's looking at.
Yep.
Indiana's shopping in the same pool now. So it's hard for me, especially when Cignetti's fantastic. And one thing we credited him a lot with, right, was roster building, et cetera. He's building the roster. Now, the James Madison pieces that were probably like good at making that core really solid, they've funneled out, obviously after successes at the highest degree, at the highest level with the national championship. So will it get a little tougher? Yeah, but it's hard for me not to see Indiana to be still one of the top teams, especially because that was a roster last year you looked at and it's like, oh, it's good. They have pieces of this and that. And they just out physical team. They out beat out teams. What's stopping them from doing that again? That's my big question. Ohio State has two, Heisman candidates on their roster. Julian Sayin, while was really good last year, they were a slow offense, which is very weird for Ohio State. When you think about it, you kind of think of those quicker, fast-paced things. They slowed it down a lot. I think they're going to speed it back up a little bit more. I think the training wheels come off for Sayin. If he can survive the training wheels coming off, Ohio State's obviously tough. But with those two teams now, both Indiana and Ohio State, Indiana not as much yet, but it is kind of championship or bust now, right? And I would say the same thing for Oregon. If the Big Ten's dominance of not just winning the national title, but a different team doing it, this feels like Oregon's year to do it, right? You had Michigan, you had Ohio State, you had Indiana. If you're going to do 4 for 4, your fourth feels like Oregon. They have everything going. The problem is we have to start having the Dan Lanning big game conversation. And I don't think people are really ready for that, right? I think in some of those really big games like top 10 or top 15, he's 1-5. And one of those is – now, I think that one is Penn State that falls off a cliff right after. It's a hard thing to kind of quantify, relatively speaking. They've struggled in the playoffs. They couldn't beat Indiana in Eugene, right? And that came close, sure, right? But they weren't there. Yes, they beat Texas Tech, but outside of that, they've struggled, right? So can Oregon win multiple big games later in the year? Like, it's great. Dan Lanning is a good coach. Dan Lanning's done basically everything Oregon can ask him to except bring a title. But for all the social media fodder and, they put out these hype videos and, they beat up Oklahoma State 69-3, that's great and all. You can do all those big things. But now the question isn't anymore, is Oregon going to be a 10-2 team? It's can you win it all? The money's there. The talent's there. I think we're slowly going to start getting into a crossroads of, is he that guy? And I get it. He has the aura, I think is the way to put it, right, of a great coach. But second round playoff exits and stuff like that for this type of team may not be as sufficient anymore, right? Where that used to be kind of we got there. I don't know. The Illinois schools are both fascinating to me. I think Northwestern has some of the best vibes coming into a season I've ever seen. I still am pro Aiden Childs. I know he's not that good, but he's fun. With Chip Kelly, that feels like fun. New stadium this year as well coming in. Ryan Field will be finished midway through. Their schedule is going to kind of beat them up. But for everything considered, this is on like the better, like, we have a lot of cool things coming up no matter how you face it. That's cool. And I'm not sold. I'm not selling my stock in Illinois. I get it. They're going to regress a little bit. I'm curious about their defense. That was supposed to be their thing last year, and then they got real banged up. But Kaden Hauser from Eastern Carolina is a great snag at QB. He's something I can see building around. And Brett Bielema has quietly made where I think with the SEC and the ACC, one of the things that says the middle tier needs to be better, right? With the SEC specifically, that was my big gripe here. The middle tier of the Big Ten is kind of gives me the same vibes as a couple years ago where the SEC's middle tier is really good. Illinois is a solid program. The last couple of years, they've really stepped it up. They've been 8 to 9 to 10 win games and done it well, right? Washington's a prime example. I think there's a little bit of regression there. Also, Jed Fish's name comes up for too many jobs. That concerns me a little bit. Every other job had Jed Fish's name on it. If we're calling in Michigan, I don't really feels like a middle tier team, right? I think they walked in backwards to probably a coach they're going to love. I think Whittingham will really win over the fan base for this whole fact that their teams are physical. And we're talking classic Big Ten, run the damn ball, hit hard on defense, etc. I mean, when I think of Utah, I thought they were a piece of the Big Ten that stuck into the Pac-12 and into the Big 12, right, under Whittingham. And now with some top-end talent, right, Bryce Underwood's still here, their running back's still really good, and the offensive coordinator who made Dampier look really good as well. They're going to be really fascinating. Minnesota's a team. I don't know if they're going to be good or not. I think Drake Lindsay needs to take a step, but they've had 6 winning seasons, I think, under 9 for PJ Fleck. That's a good upper-tier middle team, right? So I think that's the cutoff line. Iowa, USC, you have these teams that are – someone's going to have to lose, right? So some of these teams will end 8-4 and stuff like that. But the same way the SEC the last couple of years got a lot of credit for those – oh, yeah, we have 8 ranked teams because the middle of the conference is still better than a lot. I think a lot of that love should be going right up to the Northern Conference at the current moment. And you look at these rosters, you look at how they've played, right? Like, again, a Penn State, I'm not as high as you are, Caleb. I think that they kind of just got James Franklin 2.0. Like, Matt Campbell's cool. He's nice. He's a new face, but he kind of does the same thing. And he struggled in big games. Now, he's going to have more talent to do it with, but also they kind of got raided by Virginia Tech. And that was also in the recruiting class, which matters there. I don't know how long of an appetite they're going to have for him if he does similar results. UCLA, I think, is a lot of work. Even with Nico there, they had the pieces, but Deshaun Foster left that a mess, and there's the Rose Bowl controversy, etc. And the bottom tier is still kind of tough. But, like, that middle tier of the Big Ten is tough to prognosticate because I think there's a lot of really good teams in here. And it's going to lead to some guys getting fired. I think Rule might not have a job at the end of this year. I think Nebraska's going to run into some tough folks. I'm not as high on them. Danny White leaving really hurt them defensively. Their defensive coordinator years ago. Dylan Raiola may not be, Patrick Mahomes Jr., but he was a solid QB, and their replacement I'm not as high on. They don't have their running back as well, right? Like, they haven't filled the pieces the same way I thought they would. Wisconsin might make that jump because of the schedule, but they're still kind of iffy. Iowa's still good, right? Like, that's where I think this is where the Big Ten strength is secretly hiding. Is the top teams are the top teams. And I think, and like we've even seen it in these big games, right? Ole Miss gave, I forget who they played, but like when we get to the playoff, the top teams of the sport, SEC, Big Ten, ACC, have all kind of been there. But the upper echelon teams that are, in the second tier, third tier, have been better recently in the Big Ten than any other conference in the country. And that, I think, makes it interesting. And it also makes it where those better, even though they don't get the same amount of love, like Iowa should have been in the playoff discussion last year. They really weren't. They were 9-3, I think, and they almost beat Oregon, right, and stuff like that. They could have got, if they were Tennessee, they'd probably get more love. Seriously, I believe that. And I think that dominance in that second tier being better every year makes it where we're going to jumble up a little bit more. I think more guys are going to get fired. Partially also he didn't have as many turnovers last year. But there's a lot of teams you can make a case for, but someone's got to lose. That's kind of the hard part when you get into conference play. So I don't know who it's going to be just yet, but you can make me a lot of cases for a lot of the middle of the Big Ten to do something really good.
I think that Oregon – so when I was doing my research, Dante Moore threw 8 of his 10 interceptions in ranked against ranked teams. So this, kind of struggling against really good teams, also kind of, I think it was top 10 teams. Maybe it was top 10 teams is where he threw 8 of his 10 interceptions. No, it was top 25. Sorry. So this, idea that Oregon struggles with good teams, elite teams, kind of also comes from the quarterback play. It's where and it's not a coincidence, right? When you play the best teams, they're going to have the best defenses, whatever. But, I think Oregon is an elite team. I think their defensive or offensive line is probably top 10 offensive line in the country. And I think that their defensive line, just look at their college football rating. I mean, come on. And I think it's probably the best defensive line in the country. So they, their wide receiver room was really banged up last year too. Those guys are coming back, and hopefully staying healthy. So I'm excited to see what Oregon does. Ohio State, Julian Sand had a really good season last season. I think he had an above like a 70% completion percent, which is like insane. And then Jeremiah Smith is probably the best football player in the country, just like not even receiver, just football player in general. So I'm excited to see what he does. Washington is interesting. Um, I don't know. I have a feeling that they could be, pretty good this season. Iowa, they've been doing the same thing since football was invented, baby. It was like a stat. It was a crazy stat. Like they held teams to like 15 points. Like their points per game was like 15 or something like that. Like their opponents, insane. Penn State kind of did what Whittingham did to Utah. I mean, I know a lot of people left Penn State to go to Virginia Tech, but also a lot of people left Iowa State to go to Penn State. So that's just how it goes, though. Your coach leaves, you go with them. USC, it kind of just feels like it's Lincoln Riley's like time, right? You know what I mean? It's 5 years. He hasn't made it to the college football play. It just feels like he's due for one. I really like Michigan because they're getting the offensive coordinator that Devin Dampier had. And I think that at times Michigan was too conservative with Bryce Underwood. I think that if they can use his feet more and not be so concerned about, I don't know if getting him hindered, but like anytime you get outside the pocket and start trying to, it gets a little iffy. I think that, if they can do what they did with Devin Dampier in Utah, I think that would open up Bryce Underwood's game so much. And I think that'd be really good for Michigan. Penn State, though, it's just like, I just keep coming to the fact that they missed the best three teams in the conference. They don't have to play Oregon, Ohio State, or Indiana. And regardless of what level your roster is at, that is just an insane schedule right there. Like, I mean, they still got to play Michigan and stuff like that, but to miss those three is just a blessing. You guys covered it pretty well here. Let's see if I'm looking at it. Yeah, I think my favorite team coming out of the Big Ten really is Oregon. I think Dante Moore is going to take a huge step up. If he can limit those turnovers in big games, I think they can be like really like a difficult team to get around. Ohio State, though, it's just hard to ever. Oh, and I was going to ask you guys this. What are we supposed to think, or what do you guys think, or do you think anything at all about like this week 1 Texas Ohio State? Like, what does the outcome of that game even tell us?
Not much like it did last year.
Yeah.
Like last year, it was a good week 1 game. But didn't Texas win that 14-7? No, it was Ohio State.
No, Ohio
State won. Yeah.
But like, I think it'll be a better game than it was last year because both those teams have a year. So I think they'll look sharp. But if anything, all it's going to do is I think the winning coach will say, this is a great win for our program. It'll help in the playoffs. And the losing coach, to some degree, will say, why do we schedule this? This hurts my playoff chances.
No,
I kind of wish it was just like later in the season. I don't know, though.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to – I mean, we're like the media-wise is going to make a bigger deal out of it. But in all reality, at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think it will be a good tester for both those teams, like right before conference play, where they both have some tough teams they have to play in conference. But I don't think it's one of those where we're going to look at it and be like, oh my gosh, we know exactly what these teams. Now, I mean, I think it's lesser for Ohio State. Texas, they lose that game, it gets rough because the pressure is on. Ohio State, I think they could weather a loss from that game and kind of move on because they've done it before with Ryan Day where you lose a big game and then you still are able to kind of rebound. So I think we'll learn that. But, yeah, I don't think there's much like X's and O's, like playoff, like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's just I think that if it was later in the season, we could definitely tell way more about it, But it's just so weird. You have such a big game, and it's fun. And it's part of the viewership too, right? It's like we're here to kick off college football, and everyone's tuning in. It's probably on ESPN, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just interesting. And I kind of felt like you guys did too. It's like I don't really know what to think about this because does it even matter? Because they're not, it's not conference play. But we look at a Texas team that lost 3 games last season.
Yeah.
And that kind of, if you beat Ohio State and then still lose those 2, then the whole thing. But anyways, UCLA is interesting. Chesney's a great coach. I'm excited to see what he can do there. It's definitely you have to turn it around though. Like they're going down a path that wasn't great. I think he can do it though. I think he's a really good coach. But yeah, Northwestern. It's kind of funny because what is it? Pat Fitzgerald went to Michigan State. Michigan State's quarterback went to Northwestern. They play each other in the regular season, so that's going to be an interesting game. I think with Pat Fitzgerald, it's kind of he figured out a way to win in the Big Ten. Obviously, the Big Ten that he was winning in looks a lot different than the Big Ten that we're playing in now. But he's going to a team that is desperate for a winning season because I think that they've had 4 or 5 losing seasons in a row, and that's the most in Michigan State. That's the longest streak in Michigan State history. So, hopefully, getting a coach like Pat Fitzgerald helps them get back to, and again, be a spoiler team. We don't need you to be a conference champion. We don't need you to make the playoffs. We don't need you to win a national championship. Just be that Iowa. You can be the Iowa, and the Michigan State fans were like, wow, what a great season. Now, I don't think that's happening this season. I think that they have a lot of work to do, and I think their schedule is kind of rough right now. So, but yeah, Northwestern is another interesting one. Chip Kelly, Aiden Childs, new stadium, getting money thrown around. So, we'll see. I mean, Chip Kelly decimated my Eagles and my dream team Eagles back in 2011, 2012. So I still haven't forgiven him. So hopefully they go 0-12 because Chip Kelly's involved. But yeah, that's my Indiana. Oh, Indiana. I don't know what to think. Indiana, but it's Kurt Signetti. You know what I mean? Google me, I win. Google me, just Google me, I win. He's earned that now. You know what I mean? He's earned.
He's backed up everything that he said.
Right. If Kurt Signetti, it doesn't matter what's on the roster. If Kurt Signetti is the head coach, he's earned that trust. The same way Nick Saban did. It's oh, I don't know about it, but Nick Saban's the coach. And it's I don't. They lost some key pieces in Indiana, but Kurt Signetti's the coach. He's earned that now. So I don't. They might regress a little bit, but regressing from the undefeated national champion is kind of expected. Yeah, I mean, everything went basically perfect for 4 months. So if they regress a little bit, they can still be national champions. They can still win their conference, the best conference in college football. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what Michigan does, though. That's a team that really interests me. I'm excited to see what Kyle Whittingham does. Yeah, very interested.
Yeah, like I said, for me, it's the scheduling and kind of how that plays out and where we move in looking at the Big Ten as a whole. All right, now we will make our Heisman Trophy picks. Look at these guys. These guys are hot commodity. Let me go through the favorites right now. So CJ Carr is the number 1 favorite. Arch Manning, Darian Mensah at Miami, Dante Moore of Oregon, Julian Sand, Trinidad, and Jeremiah Smith. Quarterback. All right, I'll make my pick. I've had this in since after last season. I've had this in. I think CJ Carr is going to win the Heisman. And I think he's going to win it based off of 2 things. The schedule, in which he's going to be able to put up some numbers. And then I think the other factor is going to be the offense is going to flip, where last year it was Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price-centric. Now it's going to be flipped onto him, and everybody's going to look at he lost those 2 running backs. He was able to take on the burden, was able to do it, and I think Notre Dame's going to be pretty good. So I'm going with CJ Carr to win it. I've had this bet in for a while. Book it. You don't even have to. You guys don't even have to answer at this point.
For the love of God, I want it to be Jeremiah Smith, but I worry that he's going to get big time number 1 receiver treatment, and I think it's going to hurt his stats. But a guy I think who's just going to have the late season surge and might just sneak into it if Ohio State's good enough, it might just be Julian Sand. Darian Mensah I get, but the one thing about that helps this candidacy a lot is you end the season with a really good opponent. With Michigan, right, in that big rivalry game. And if Julian Sand pops out there and has a season that he's expected to have, I could see that with the schedule doing it. I don't trust Texas. Miami, I think their offense will be good. I think they have the pieces. I just don't know if they have the narrative late there. And I don't trust Dante Moore for Heisman. I trust him to be a good QB. I don't trust him for Heisman. I think Ole Miss will be a little regressive and just enough where Trinidad might make the ceremony. And I think Julian Sayin has actually weirdly the easiest path because he has the toughest schedule, if that makes sense. So if he clears that, I think his odds get better. Where like if we talk about Notre Dame being 10-2 again and CJ Carr struggles against BYU, Miami, the whole candidacy's gone. Even if he lights up Navy for 50 points. So there's more chances for Julian Sayin to win a quarterback favorite award. My off the board pick, it will still be Ahmad Hardy. No, let's just be adults here.
No, it's great.
And also, you want me to make you the narrative case if he plays every game this season? If Mizzou plays well, guy who shot early in the year, makes his miraculous recovery, leads Mizzou to whatever, I can write you that story. God, those football writers love that.
That's true. People love the story.
I am gonna go. I think that the Heisman is just as much its stats, wins, but also just enough of like Heisman moments. And I think that the schedule for Ole Miss really opens up the opportunity to have some really good, great moments. Now it could be the opposite, right? It could be moments where you're like Trinidad, you should have done this. Your Heisman chances are gone. But also, I think there's moments to where this is a guy who's played in college football for 6 years. He fought legal battles just to get back here. And I think that, like I said, he can, in college football, your quarterback can will you into wins. And I think that, they won't win the conference championship. Maybe they get to the college football playoffs or whatever. But I think that he'll have enough of those moments and the stats to back it up and the wins to back it up. I think that Trinidad will win the Heisman. My next kind of guy is a Dante Moore, kind of for a different reason. If this team ends up going like 12-0 or whatever, and he has like pretty good stats, it's going to be kind of hard to be like, it kind of in a Mendoza way where it's like, yes, he did have like some Heisman moments, but he was just so consistently good and his team was just so good that it was like, who else are you going to give it to, So I think Dante Moore is kind of in that position. If I could pick who I wanted to win, obviously I would love CG Carr to win as a Notre Dame fan, right? Remember we established that last season. I am a Notre Dame fan. But also Trinidad, I just love his story from coming from Division II football, fighting these legal battles just to get back on the field, losing your head coach, playing him on September 19th, where I hope he throws for like 350 yards and has 200 yards. Wouldn't that just be amazing? And they win the game. Like, wouldn't that just be great? So I'm going to pick Trinidad Chambliss to win the Heisman. I just think he has so many storylines, so many ways to have just a great Heisman story this season that I think it's going to be hard to deny him.
I love how we all want different people. It makes us
we got to, dude.
Better. Makes
I'll see you there.
Not scripted at all. Not scripted at all. All right, moving on to now national titles. So these are the top 12. When you look at kind of national title contention and kind of where they're at, Ohio State comes in as a favorite at plus 550. Then Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Indiana, Miami, Texas Tech, LSU, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Alabama. I think we've all heard these, names and teams, over the years for sure. Teams not on here. A&M is on here at plus 2,700. USC is at plus 3,500, and Michigan would be 15th at plus 4,000. So there is still some teams that could do some things not viewed in this. All right, playoff picks, boys. Who wants to go first?
All right, I'm going to just go for the jugular and make things very fun. All right. We're going to get Notre Dame, Texas National Championship.
I love it.
Two most talented teams in college football. It's going to get really toxic. And let's see, it's a coin flip here. I trust Notre Dame more than I trust Texas. And it's going to be weird because Indiana's probably going to have the tougher path. They didn't deserve it. Georgia's going to lose stupidly. Ohio State might lose in the first round. So that's my thought. The other team I really think could do it, I really like Miami. I really, really – and I honestly, if I keep talking, I might talk myself into it. But I'm going for pure chaos, and I think the chaotic world of Notre Dame making the title and winning it the year after Indiana does, and then it ignites Indiana to be like the football state after being the basketball country for all these years, would just be chaotic. Now I'm going to be definitely wrong, and it's going to be Miami after I just said all their praises. But let's go with that chaos. Sure.
I did there's like a thing where you can just like pick every game, and I did the Power Four conferences, and I just like picked every game, and it was like totally. I was just like laying in bed picking shit. Um, and I one cool thing that did happen: Notre Dame and Michigan played each other in the playoffs. That was I was like,
Interesting.
yeah, I was like that would be
Very
great.
interesting.
I think that Michigan got there. I gave them they won. They beat Oklahoma. I was like they lost to Oklahoma last year and probably win this year. But I mean that Oklahoma defense is really good. So, anyways, and when I did it, I had Ole Miss losing to Texas, Texas losing to LSU, and then LSU losing to Ole Miss. That was like a triangle that I had. It just got so weird. Yeah, it got so weird. But my national championship was, and I'm going to stick with it, even though I don't think it's very realistic. But I'm going to go Oregon versus Ole Miss.
Oregon versus Trevor's going all in on the Old Miss.
The year of Trinidad is upon
The year
us.
of Ole Miss, Oregon. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Who's your winner?
I'm gonna go Oregon. I think they're just the better overall team. You know what? I'm gonna go Ole Miss just to keep riding with them. I think Oregon's gonna win, but I can't just jump off the Ole Miss train now. I gotta give it to them. Heisman, national champion. We gotta have Ole Miss win. Are you kidding me?
Trevor's getting
We
doxed
lost Trevor,
by
yeah.
Ole Miss.
Oh.
We lost him.
We lost him. We lost him.
Jesus Christ.
Dude,
Dude.
I mean, no surprise at all of he's gone.
He's got doxed. That's
He
crazy.
is gone. He's said his pick and he's gone.
We are 2 hours, 12 minutes in. I get it.
I mean it happens. So I will give my pick here. So I mean looking at the playoffs, like I think Michigan makes the playoff. I think it's interesting. I think Penn State makes the playoffs. Interesting. I think LSU makes the playoffs. It makes it interesting. So I mean, just some teams that I think can make outside of like just the top guys. My struggle with this pick for the national title is I don't want to go all in to get my hopes up on this season, and then it just crumble in front of my face.
Just pick Miami so you feel better. I picked Notre Dame for you.
I
Lane Kiffin can never stop me.
yeah.
I will never be stopped by Lane Kiffin.
I mean, look, it can. He sees everything. He's a social media guy. He sees everything.
I'll never be stopped by Lane Kiffin.
All right, here's my pick for the national title.
Notre Dame. Let me just write it down.
I am going to go Notre Dame,
Jacker.
and I'm kind of a toss-up of who they'll play. Between they're both teams that you guys said, but I just think it's kind of the year of this guy and this coach. I think it'll be Notre Dame, Texas, in that.
Yeah.
I think they're probably Texas is by far the most talented team, and I think that they'll kind of just stumble their way up on there. And they'll play Notre Dame, and it's tough. This is a tough one, but I'm going to go belief in my team. I think
There you go.
It's the national title. I think we win it because we should win the national title. That's where I'm at with it, is we should. And that probably means we won't win it. But like I said, I think it's going to be – I think we're going to have a very fun playoff when you look at it all said and done, because there's a lot of teams that are very, very good. And in the kind of age of NIL, it's extended the playing field, and there's just a lot of – like Oregon is a really good team. Georgia, I think, is going to be good. Miami's really good.
I really keep thinking Miami the more I think about it. Do you want me to take Miami so we have 3 different people? I'll take Notre Dame out of this. You know what? I'll put Miami in there, and that way we have 3 different people. We look better as a podcast. That also gives you a chance to say, I rooted for my team from day one. I want to give that to you.
It's just one of those things where there's just so many good teams. Like I said, Ohio State's really good. Like I said, I think LSU's really good. I think they make the playoff. I like Michigan a lot. I think they make the playoff. Penn State, just with that schedule, I think makes the playoff. So it's BYU, I think. There's just a lot of talented teams that it's going to be just – we're going to look at it in the last 4 teams. We're going to be like, all those teams could win the national title. And I don't know if we've had that so far in the 14 playoff. Like, I don't
It's maybe
know.
the 12 though. I feel like, and also you think about it, one of the title teams last year was the 11th seed, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was the 1 and the 11 in a 1-score game, and so it's like the crazy part about this is we can go all day and pontificate about these great teams, and it could just be the one team that's second in their conference, like Miami was, even though they're really first, but like that just peaks at the right time and does something. And that's the beauty of the sport. There's a level of chaos that still exists. It's getting harder and harder to find, but we still have a level of chaos that can come here. And that's why we keep trying to predict it every year. And who knows? But we get it in a couple weeks. We're right there.
No, that's very, very, very true. Jerry, for recording purposes, for when I make the video for our picks, say your picks again so I have the correct verbiage.
It's going to be a lot, but I do think that Miami goes against Texas, and I trust the Hurricanes just a bit more. They have a really solid core, and I think they've upgraded the positions they struggled in the last few years. So adding on that on top of already good team, Miami goes home with it.
Perfect. We all have 3 different teams. I picked Notre Dame. Jerry goes Miami. Trevor's riding Old Miss. High and tight here.
Go Rebels, baby.
Trinidad train.
Be careful. You already lost your one.
Oh, sorry.
You already lost your one. Be careful. Especially where you are. You're more north than I am.
You gotta watch yourself there. Lane Kiffin said some things about that.
Yeah, and he can't stop me.
Yeah.
Historically, rooting for Mississippi has been a problem. So
yeah, that's a good point. I should probably.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's our college football preview. It's here in a matter of, I think, 2 weeks. I think it's the first week 0. I think is in 2 weeks. Who would have thought?
We'll see you in Ireland, boys.
Yeah, I mean, it starts off there. That's North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, we're gonna see if the dumpster fire is hot real quick. We'll be back next week, and as always, thanks for watching.
Peace.